Welcome to the Jamal Thomas Morning Show. My name is Jamal Thomas. This is indeed my show. I hope you guys are doing all right this morning, wherever you are. And maybe I should say, maybe not this morning. I will say this morning because it's called the Jamal Thomas Morning Show. God damn it. I'm going to be at Eastern Time Zone show business, even if I'm not even on Eastern Time Zone. But that's okay. We have a damn good show for you today. I apologize for the poor performance of the show yesterday. All hell broke loose in that show. It happens. You do 1,000 shows, so one or two are going to go awry. But all things being equal, we're going to get back on the track today. We have, in fact, I have a new guest on the show. And yes, she has the correct time zone. So she will be here. God, man, I kicked myself for missing that guest. I was really interested in a conversation. She was an African who grew up in North Korea. Oh, that's like by itself. Not to mention you add to it, her dad was Equatorial New Guinea. He was tried, executed as first president of the country. Yeah, it's okay. Spill milk, all that good stuff. Today and tomorrow, and I'll say today because I don't think I'm doing a show tomorrow. You may see me show up tomorrow, but it wouldn't necessarily be a formal show. I am leaving Malaysia. And you know, the thing is, when you've been somewhere for 3 months, it feels like you're living in that place. At least for me, within the first couple of weeks, providing nothing goes awry. I feel like I've soaked in. The thing that sucked when I first left Washington, D.C., was that each place was like a month. Okay, that sucks. That sucks. It just wears you down because you're going from place to place to place. When you can soak, oh, that's much better. And not just soak. It's. I always say I'm a better person when I travel. And I'm realizing it's not entirely the travel. It's the brevity of the travel. The longer you stay somewhere, the more your old habits come back. It's like you can't run from yourself. It's like you find the places that you like, the places that you enjoy, and all that good stuff. But no, man, I've enjoyed Malaysia. It is a fantastic place. Yeah, it's good. It's good. So there's that. But for the guest roster, Laith Marouf, he's going to be on at 7:15. Arnaud Develay, he's going to be on at 8 o'clock. I have a segment that I want to do at 8:30 because I think I royally screwed it up yesterday because of the way the schedule went. I don't want to break it into 2 segments as opposed to having one big segment. I think that goes down a bit better when you're very specific to what you're trying to get at. Dr. Jemima Pierre, I can't roll my R's. Dr. Jemima Pierre, she's a new guest. There's an indictment that has come down for who they call a gang leader in Haiti. The gentleman they call Barbecue. I'm blanking on his name, so I need to pull it up. But come on. Right there. All right. So the U.S. is, I don't want to say the word if I think I'm going to get it wrong. Jimmy Barbecue Sherriezer. She can pronounce it better than I can because I butcher names. I always read my news more than I watch my news, so it's hard to pronunciation. But Dr. Jimmy Barbecue Sherriezer. The fact that the guy's name is Barbecue gives some context, kind of. So one of the guests that we had on during the radio show when all of this was really kicking off, and there was this question of what is going to happen, what should people do, what should the U.S. do, what should somebody else do? And the thought was, okay, well, because the UN military screwed it up so poorly, giving people various diseases, not to mention getting all these women pregnant. Let's get Black people to deal with Black people. It's like, hey, but those people are from Kenya. It's not really Haiti. Yeah, close enough. They're black. That's all we need. They're Black. What's wild about this is when I was in Kenya, I had the opportunity to meet a cab driver. I tend to talk to my cab drivers, at least I used to. But when I was talking to the cab driver, he was telling me, he says, look, I have friends that are in the U.S. military. It's like, dude, how do you have friends in Kenya that are in the U.S. military? He said they have the uniform and all. He said, I promise you. He said, I can take you to the barracks if you want to see it. Well, this kind of hits at that point, right? He pointed out, he says, yeah, they're paid to do very horrible things around the world. They have a wife and a kid, they have a family, and they need to support their families. And so when the U.S. gives them a very lucrative paycheck, many of them take it. So it's not shocking when you hear this thing of, well, we're going to send Kenyans into Haiti, even though it's like, well, those are two different continents. Is what it is. Putting out an indictment for barbecue, or for Jimmy, as a gang leader is interesting because A, he's not a U.S. citizen, so there's that. B, you're talking about going into somebody else's country, there's that, which gets a whole sovereignty issue and even hits at the Maduro thing. But more to the point, is he just a gang leader? Is he just a gang leader? Or do they undermine whatever is happening in Haiti by calling it gang wars? Now, I had a gentleman that was from Haiti. Well, let's say he was Haitian American. And he was breaking this down in a way that you would never hear in Western media. That was breathtakingly good. Robert Patillo, actually, he's a lawyer in the States. Breathtakingly illuminated. What's happening in Haiti may not necessarily be a gang war. It actually may be a civil war. But we'll see. She gave me information to read in order to get me up to date on, at the very least, up to 2024. But the indictment is going to create a new spin associated with it. And she can dig into the details of Jimmy Barbecue, what is taking place, what is happening. Is it really gangsterization? Who's paying for the gangsterization? That's the other part. Meaning you have protests, and then you have infiltrators in the protests. And then, just like in Syria, some of these other countries, the question comes up, who's paying for these mobs? Who's paying for these gangs, like in Sudan? Who's paying for that, right? Who's bankrolling this? It's not like people could just have like these kind of paramilitaries without somebody paying for the paramilitary. And what is the objective and what is the goal of those things? No, it's fascinating. So we're going to get into that when she gets here. And of course, the one, the only, Sarah Bils, Geopolitics. She is fantastic. It was her outlet that published, well, I guess there were other outlets. I saw it first on her outlet, so I'm going to give her credit for it, damn it. The death toll. The death toll. And just in case you don't know what I mean. So scenes like this have been taking place across all of Ukraine. And I pointed out afterwards.
Вибачте, ну собакою, ну.
Що ви делаете? Яка квартира? Третий этаж. Зачем ты меня бьешь? Нет! Нет! Ты куда? Нет!
There's a reason when that Ukrainian guy who was trying to drag a press gang, one of those, I think it was the guy who was on the street or something like that, and the guy knocked the guard out, just one punch, just laid the press gang goon out. Drink coffee to that. That's a good thing. That's a good thing. They're dragging those people away to die. I mean, God, man, there's so many of these videos that are out. Here's another one that is just disturbing in every fiber of it.
Не кричи, доця. Загашник вискакує з машини, коли поліція зупиняється з поліцейською. І прямо б'є нам машину, і лізе вікно ламає.
Скажи, я на детский мир стараюсь. Ой, вон Вадим, це Вадим був. Да, все, ложи трубку, не себе знімаєш. Потім провірте, чи заблоковані двері. Тише, нічого не цей.
Номер машини читай. 1808.
Що таке? П'яний, що ти робиш? Що ти робиш? Вадим! Вадим, они все пьяные! Они пьяные! Пьяные! Пьяные алкаши!
That's how the video ends. That's how the video ends. Imagine being a child in that car. Imagine being a child in that car. Hell, imagine being the guy in that car. And then you find out that the numbers that Zelensky has been hiding is that 1.7 million Ukrainians have been killed in the war. A war, by the way, that many of the people who voted for Zelensky, the majority of the people who voted for Zelensky, didn't want to take place. 1.7 million. I saw stats somewhere that pointed out that was like 90% of the people that has been press gangers are dead. Or I mean, the people that were in the military are effectively dead. Right here, I'll go through the numbers one more time. It's disturbing. And the reason why they have to go to that length, where they're dragging people off the street who are walking their dogs, dragging people off the street who are delivering pizzas, going into bars and nightclubs and all of this stuff and snatching people, because of these numbers right here. 1.7 million dead or missing. 1.7 million dead or missing. Do you remember that Zelensky and the media organizations were reporting that 8,000 people were killed in 2025? It's laughable. The real number is 621,000 in 2025 alone. 621,000. What the mainstream media reported, going along with Zelensky's numbers, were 8,000 people in Ukraine died. The number is 621,000. That is so comical. That is as comical as Zelensky's penis being large enough to play it on a piano. It just is. It's absurd. In 2022, you had 118,500. In 2023, you had 405,400. In 2024, you had 595,000. And of course, in 2025, the year's not even over with yet. 621,000. That number could easily go to 1 million this year alone. This year alone. So when you're seeing videos of them snatching people out of cars, there's a reason they're snatching people out of cars. There's a reason they're doing that. And the reason they're doing that has everything to do with the manpower shortage that they're experiencing on the front lines. Douglas McGregor made the point of saying the front lines have practically collapsed. Fair enough. The reality of it is the Donbass will fall this year. And all of the hemming and hawing and everything else that Zelensky is doing, it's not going to change that reality. He could say in front of every camera that he wants to, we are not giving up the Donbass. We're not moving our troops out. We're not doing any of this stuff. It's not going to matter. They are going to be forced, compelled. But the number of dead, wounded, maimed to give up that territory, whether Zelensky claims that he wants to or not. Dead man walking from the standpoint of Zelensky. And maybe I should say the man with no future. And unfortunately, when you put a man with no future in power, their future comes first. They don't care about the populations. They care about themselves. So this is obviously a catastrophe. It is obviously a tragedy. One of the other points I want to point out, though, is that Donald Trump is acting as if he's peacemaker in chief. You're a loser in chief. There's a difference. You are making peace because you failed in your effort to overthrow the government of Russia, or at the very least, overtly damage Russia. Yes, you may have been able to constrain its operations around the globe and those type of things, but you took a military that was 150,000 people that is now nearly 1 million, if not over 1 million, with an industrial base that is breathtaking. You took something that wasn't a threat and made it a threat. That's not the same thing as damaging, undermining, splitting Russia into sections and everything else. That is the opposite of those things. So you failed in your effort. And because you failed in your effort, you've now come to Jesus and have made a choice. Okay, I see 1.7 million dead. I see territory being lost hand over fist. I see one village after another over the course of a day or so being liberated. I see that within a few months, Donbass will be liberated. Okay, let's come to agreements. Let's come to an arrangement. It's that. He was dragged to the Russian position. It's not that Donald Trump is like, I'm just peacemaker in chief who just wants to make deals because I care about life so much. If he cares about life so much, he wouldn't be backing a genocide in Gaza. Those are different things. What he cares about is it is going to look horrendous when this collapses, and it collapses on my watch if I keep this going. Between that and coming to some kind of agreement, I would rather make an agreement. And as I point out, this is not about the U.S. giving up primacy. It's not that. They are trying to take a tactical withdrawal from a position that they recognize is a disaster. Those are very different things. You can still maintain primacy or try to maintain primacy while also recognizing areas on the battlefield in a global context that you're not necessarily doing well in and that you're frankly losing. So we should be very clear. Those numbers are disastrous. And in the context of being disastrous, one second. In the context of being disastrous, it is where we've found ourselves. I hate it when people do that. So Laith just sent a text saying, hey, bro, I don't feel like a bro. So I'm just going to have to cancel on you at the last minute. It's like, dude, I talked to you yesterday. In fact, I talked to you like yesterday evening. All right, so let's do the other segments, and let's do those segments now. And we'll try to break those segments up in sections. The first thing that I want to point out, there are a lot of people who are, there are a lot of people who have been entranced into what I would call a cynical position in regards to their politics, entranced into a cynical position in regards to their politics. All right. Meaning, you get so accustomed to things taking the most negative stance or negative turn that you just get into your mindset that this negative turn is just the way things are. And if I just set my compass to that, then I will most likely be right. Yes, but that's not really analysis. That's something else. That's just cynicism masquerading as analysis. And because oftentimes that turns out that way, you will most likely get it right. I think on this one, they're getting it wrong. I've said it before, I'll say it again. And my position or point of view is hardening on this. There are things that people say that gives a context to what they're trying to do. And when you look at the larger world itself, the context matters. It makes a difference. It shows up in real world reality in a way that gives some context. God damn it, Carl. You are awesome. I think Carl Shaw just saved my ass. Excellent. Cool. All right, I think Carl Shaw just saved my ass. Kind of. And I can still do this at 8:30. So that works. Good. Because I wanted to do it at 8:30. I didn't necessarily want to do it now. All right. So I'm going to bring on Carl Shaw. Anybody who's doing a YouTube channel? Anytime you're ever doing it? Overbooking helps. Overbooking helps. I know it doesn't seem like it. Because it's like, oh man, there are going to be 4 people trying to hit this position. Okay, well, you can always have a larger show where you break them up into blocks, or you can always push, say, hey man, somebody got that spot. You can get the other spot. So, yeah, Carl Ja, shout out to you, Carl. Any bad word I've ever said about you, Carl, it's off, it's gone, it's gone. And no, I don't think I've ever said a bad word about Carl. Okay, so Carl is going to join. Look, I would say this, and I would nail this at 8:30. people aren't wrong. There are various points of view that are taking place in this kind of bubble of independent media. Everything from Alexander McHarris, everything from Mark Sabota, everything from Brian Beletic, everything from McGregor, everything from, Victor Brodsky, whatever his name is. You have all of these people, and all of these people have different points of view in this space on this one. I guess my point of view is not governed by theirs. My point of view is more so governed by what's happening. As I've always pointed out, I may come to a point of view because I'm coming to a point of view based on what is taking place on the ground. What is taking place on the ground is the U.S. is being taken apart in a humiliating loss, or Ukraine is being taken apart in a humiliating loss with the U.S. and Western backers back again. 2, Donald Trump has no capacity to have any control over the Russians. And if you keep pushing, then you are going to get to a precipice where you're going to have to use some sort of military force because that is all you got. Your sanctions don't matter. Your threats don't matter. They don't care. You have blown off every agreement, so there is no trust. And so now you're in a position where not only are you losing on the ground where you can't do anything about, it's across the globe. Meaning this war was so big and all the things that were being said from the standpoint of the European leaders, there's no way to hide from this failure. So there's that. The other part to this is that it's the things Donald Trump say, not the content. It's the meta things that Donald Trump says. As I point out, he says things that give you a window into his thinking in a way that may be missed if you're not necessarily paying attention. Western media has certain narratives that they've ran with. So they would say, it's a stalemate, et cetera, et cetera. It's all this nonsense. And so they miss some of those things because they're stuck in their bubble of narratives that they just fundamentally don't see reality for exactly what it is. It's almost as if, hey, you need to go out and push Western ideology. You need to push hegemony. And they've encapsulated that. They've ingrained that so much into their DNA. Reality doesn't matter. Even when everything in reality is telling you something different, reality doesn't matter. They have a job to do. Go out, lie to the public about how awesome the U.S. is. We may do bad things, but we're doing it by accident. It's not on purpose. Those other people, they do it on purpose. In which case, they would browbeat all of the countries, ironically, that the U.S. doesn't like. But it's, shows imperial privilege to the ones that it's okay with, that it does. It's absurd. But they get it wrong. They get it wrong constantly. So there's that. The metadata is super interesting. It's super interesting. When he's saying stuff at the press conference or at the Alaska Summit, and at the Alaska Summit, he's effectively saying stuff to the point of saying, we've come to an agreement. Okay, what is that agreement? I came out on my video and pointed out, it sounds like they have some kind of agreement. I don't know what that is, but it sounds like there's some kind of agreement. The very next day, Donald Trump comes out and says, we're no longer doing a ceasefire. We're now doing a peace treaty. Now, for everybody else still saying, nothing here, this is nothing burger, this is nothing. The fact that you spend 8 months saying that you were looking for one thing and then flip on a dime in order to go to something radically different than the thing that you were going with that is more in line with the Russian position, that is not a nothing burger. They got it wrong. I got it right, and I'm going to accept that. I think I got it right on this second front. All things being equal, it's not that the U.S. is giving up primacy, but the U.S. will make a tactical withdrawal just like anybody else if they're losing in a particular area. If you and I are playing chess and there's a part of the board where I've fundamentally effed up or that didn't go the way that I was looking for, I'm looking for counterplay elsewhere because I don't necessarily want that part of the board to drag me down into the abyss. Doesn't mean I give up the game. It means I give up the position. Those are very different things. I don't know why people are taking the cynical route as if the U.S. wouldn't necessarily do that if they had the opportunity to do that. Now, the secondary part is whether or not Donald Trump would actually walk. That's his power. I'll walk. I'll leave it to all of you. You guys figure it out. Pulling out intelligence, CIA, pulling out all of the personnel that's on the ground in Ukraine. You all figure it out. Which is why when the Europeans initially was talking, they were very, they were speaking with their chests. Oh, we're not going to allow this. And I'm not giving up territorial concessions. And I'm not doing anything. I'm not doing this. Trump is not going to tell me what to do. And then you get pictures that come out that are effectively panned all over the world as humiliating, like this. That's humiliating. Masters of the universe at one point, sitting there with the US president telling them the business. You get Trump in the middle of the meeting saying, I'm going to go talk to Putin, and just gets up, walks out, and calls Putin at 1 a.m. in the morning in Moscow time. That's humiliating. All of the talk that was taking place before gets turned into quiet, hushed tones of begging and pleading and asking the emperor, please, sir, please, with Trump not caring at all. Hell, Trump even kicked von der Leyen out of the meeting, even kicked her out the meeting, saying this meeting is for leaders. Not you. You weren't elected. Oh, Carl, I thought I sent it. Yeah, it's like, you're not a leader. I'm kicking you out. I'm saying the optics shouldn't be ignored, but should be put in context. Habitual liars lie. And when Donald Trump goes to Europe or talks to Europe, he listens to everything they have to say, and then he goes to Alaska and changes everything with this whole, I'm going for a permanent deal, not a ceasefire. And Europe is like, what the hell just happened? They misunderstood that habitual liars lie. And Donald Trump has a tendency to tell people whatever they want to hear. Hey, I'm going to end the war in Israel. Hey, I'm going to bring back jobs. Hey, you're going to do great. Hey, I signed all of these peace deals. He says whatever he has to say to get from point A to point B. Now, the problem, of course, with that is, which one are you lying to? Are you lying to Putin or are you lying to the Europeans? I personally think he may be lying to the Europeans. Again, it's not because Donald Trump, A, he doesn't respect them. There's that. B, he has no power to do anything for Putin on the battlefield. None. How is Donald Trump going to get security guarantees? Tell me that. How? And when he's saying, I'm going to use air power, maybe we'll use air power. We might, who knows? Maybe. Is he telling the neocons? Is he telling the Europeans exactly what they want to hear? That's what I postulated in my other video. That's what I think now. None of these things are real. You would need the Russians to agree to any of this. And of course, they're not going to agree to it. Nor does the US, in real terms, if they think about it for a moment, would they want to agree to it. The problem that you have is if you agree to any kind of security guarantees, that is an act of war if anything takes off. And what would it take for Europeans or for Ukrainians who want their territory back to create a provocation where the Russians respond to? They ignore the provocations just like they did with this war, and they all of a sudden say, we got our war. You can't do it. Can't do it. So I could be wrong. Oh, Carl is here. I'm sorry. I didn't hear you. I didn't hear the buzz, Carl. I'm sorry. How you doing, man? You doing okay?
I'm doing good. How are you, sir?
I'm doing fine. I am so sorry. I didn't hear the buzz. Usually there's a beep when the person comes on, and I didn't hear it this time around.
Okay, next time I'll beep myself. I'll beep myself in.
You saved my ass this morning, Carl, because my guest flicked out. So I thank you for this. I thank you for this. I had a conversation with KJ No. And in the conversation, I was asking him, we're coming up on the anniversary of the surrender of the Japanese to the Chinese. And I guess I was prodding him like, can you go into how that started? It's a complicated, fascinating history where you get the situation where the Chinese, let's say the government, is fighting revolutionary forces, communist revolutionary forces. At the exact same time, there's an invasion by the Japanese. They join together to fight the Japanese while also continuously fighting each other. And then you think to yourself at the end of that, how the hell did the communists win that when they were the revolution as opposed to the government itself? There's so many questions with that. Like, it's a fascinating history. I've had the opportunity to read through it. I got to be honest, I haven't read that stuff in a very long time, so it's very vague to me. But it may be
That's
something
why you should subscribe. That's why you should subscribe to my podcast, Jamar. I had a whole series on the Chinese Civil War.
Did you?
1945. Yes. And I, so like, because this is really the most important events leading up to the 21st century. Now with the China's rise more apparent than ever, like it's very important to understand what led to China to this step. Because back in 1945, China was was desperately poor, was brutalized by invasion. I have a personal story to share about the Japanese surrender, because my dad was born in July 1945. So he was a baby in August. The Japanese surrender announcement was August 15th, right? The September 2nd or September 3rd, that's when they formally signed the unconditional surrender. So when my dad was just barely a month old, the whole town, there was a widespread panic in my dad's hometown. The Japanese troops are coming. Because the last time the Japanese troop came through the town was in 1937 during the Battle of Shanghai, and they burned down the entire town. So people were really panicking, and everybody getting ready to evacuate. Because my dad is a baby, everybody was urging my grandma to ditch my dad, because baby cry will
really
raise attention. Everybody was telling my grandma, get rid of the baby. We don't want Japanese to know where we are. But of course, my grandma refused to give up my dad. And it turns out it was all much ado about nothing, because the Japanese were coming to town to get on the train to head down to the next big city, Hangzhou, for the surrender. For the surrendering ceremony. So this is when August 15th, when the Japanese emperor announced the surrender over the radio. And so this is my story, like a very personal story about the Japanese surrender. My thanks for my grandma. I'm here. My dad is still alive. But yeah, this story is not unique. It's repeated across China. In fact, when I visited my dad's hometown in 2019, I noticed all the Buddhist temples in town were rebuilt after 1980s. I just naturally assumed they were destroyed during the Cultural Revolution. So I asked my dad. My dad's like, no. All the temples were bombed out in 1937 during the Battle of Shanghai when the Japanese came through. They firebombed the whole town. All the temples were destroyed. And of course, after the Japanese surrender, the Chinese Civil War got started. So nobody got around to rebuild those temples. and then Cultural Revolution happened, So it's only until 1980s, people finally got around to rebuild those temples. And now there are quite many of them. Many of them very beautifully redone. But yeah, so China is recovering from that now. It took a couple generations. My dad was born basically at the end of the war, and my generation now back in China is actually they're the captain of these generations are the generation that made China great again. Yeah.
That is amazing. I mean, people need to internalize what it would take for somebody to say, you need to get rid of that baby. Can you imagine that? Like, just in a normal circumstance, like, hey, we're so scared about what's about to take place, all of the atrocities and everything else. You need to get rid of that baby because we don't want the Japanese to find us. It's like, okay, get rid of them where? That's just, yeah, that's rough, Carl. That's rough. But fortunately, you are here. And I appreciate your dad for not doing anything drastic in that moment. No, I think.
Well, he was a baby. My dad was a baby at that moment. There's
Oh,
nothing he could
oh,
have
I
done.
see. It was your grandmother and your. Okay, I see
My
what's going on.
my grandma. Yes.
Okay, okay. I misunderstood. Okay, I misunderstood. And yeah, duh, right? Logically, I should know better. Okay, okay. It's funny. Manila Chan, when she talks about stuff like that and talks about like being in the Vietnam War, not her personally, but let's say her family and how they came over to the States and what they were going through in Laos and whatnot. It's the war. Like as Americans, we don't see that stuff. Like we don't get it. Like we don't get it in real terms. Like the desperation that people are under when they're in these war zones. It's almost like a video game to us, and that's a detriment. Um, So how did the war between the government itself, let's say God, there's a very specific word for it that I'm missing that'll come to me in a moment, but the government itself and the opposition forces of the Communist Party, how did that clash start? Because that clash started before the Japanese invaded, correct?
Oh yeah, that happened a long time ago. I mean, like so I didn't realize I'm coming here to give a lecture on the on the Chinese
I'm
modern
sorry,
history. I'm very happy to do it. I'm very happy to do it because this is my forte. I love history. So the nationalist government.
That's the word I'm looking for.
They themselves were a rebel or revolutionary a government, if you will, because back in 1920s, the official government, Chinese government that was recognized by the League of Nations, sits in Beijing. But Sun Yat-sen at the time, he decided to start a rival government with his newly reformed Nationalist Party in Canton, China, which is today Guangzhou. Canton, that's where Cantonese came from. So he started his own government down in the south, and he received support from Soviet Union because Soviet Union at that time, they wanted to break out of international isolation. They just fought off the Allied intervention in the Russian Civil War when United States,
yes,
of all powers, sent
yes,
troops to Russia to invade Russia in the Arctic, both in Arctic Circle, in the ports of Murmansk, and in Siberia. You know, Americans, Japanese, they all sent troops to Siberia. Chinese too did because the Chinese under the Beijing government also sent troops because they were part of the so-called Allied intervention in the Russian Civil War. So understandably, the USSR decided to support this rebel government started by Sun Yat-sen in Canton, and they give a lot of money, weapons, and Soviet advisors with one condition, that they need to work with the newly formed Chinese Communist Party, which just got formed in 1941. The Chinese Communist Party at that time was very young. When Mao attended the meeting to found the Communist Party back in July 1921, there's like less than 100 members all across China. But the Soviet condition was, okay, we'll give you all these weapons and money, but you have to work with the Chinese Communist Party. So the communist and the nationalists, the foreign coalition government, and they started the so-called Northern Expedition to get rid of the Chinese warlords that was populating the rest of the country, including sitting in the government in Beijing. So they were very successful in 1927. This is after the death of Sun Yat-sen. One of the Sun Yat-sen's protege, Chiang Kai-shek, being a commander of the army, he kind of very quickly took over. He led the Northern Expedition, but when the Northern Expedition force was about to take Shanghai, the communist force under Zhou Enlai, actually, they snuck in Shanghai to stage a workers' uprising to get rid of the warlords first. Yeah. And when that happened, Chiang Kai-shek was very alarmed at the growing power of the communists. And Chiang Kai-shek himself actually traveled to the Soviet Union, and he didn't like what he saw. So he was suspect the communists is gonna try to take over. So he decided to strike preemptively. He launched the Shanghai Massacre. He worked with the Shanghai mafia called Green Gang to stage a massacre. All the communist sympathizer, anybody who is suspected to be communist, 5,000 people were killed in Shanghai. This was a Shanghai massacre in 1927. So that caused a split between the communist and the nationalist government. And Mao led some of these remnant communists to stage a guerrilla movement in the countryside. And so this is when this communist nationalist war started. This was way back in 1927. But the two sides fought on until. So a lot of people only know the World War II started when Germany invaded Poland in 1939. But for the Chinese, the war started long before that, because the Japanese launched a surprise attack in 1931 to take over Manchuria in what's called Mukden X incident. And ever since, Japan has been at war with China. And there was battle in Shanghai in 1931-32. There was battle on the Great Wall in 1933. And there was Chiang Kai-shek decided to make peace, because he said, the foreign invaders, that's like the disease. The Japanese, they're like the disease of the skin. The communists, there's a disease of the heart. So so I'm gonna have to get rid of the communists first before we can unite as one to resist the Japanese. So he decided to make peace with the Japanese in 1933, and to focus on extermination campaign on the communists. But this forced the communists to start a long march from their southern communist base, wandering through halfway through China, finally ended in northwest China. And then Chiang Kai-shek sent the warlords, Manchurian warlord Zhang Xueliang, who just lost his homeland Manchuria, to go attack the communists. But for Chiang Kai-shek, was two birds with one stone. He get rid of the communists and the warlord Zhang Xueliang at his forces at the same time. But Zhang Xueliang was losing against communists, and he realized what is going on. And all his subordinates want to go fight the Japanese because they want to go home. They're like, what the hell we're doing in the northwest fighting the communists when we want to go back to northeast when the Japanese had taken over our homes? So his subordinates are not very happy. Then in 1936, when Chiang Kai-shek came to visit, went to Xi'an to visit Zhang Xueliang to oversee the final extermination campaign of the communists, Zhang Xueliang actually had collaborated with communists beforehand. So he staged a coup. He arrested Chiang Kai-shek. And that's when he forced Chiang Kai-shek to sign an agreement that he will work for a united front with the communists to fight the Japanese. So Chiang Kai-shek, in exchange for his own life, he agreed to sign this agreement, broadcast all over. And to Chiang Kai-shek's credit, he stayed by that. So after that, he was released. Zhang Xueliang himself flew Chiang Kai-shek back home in Nanjing, but Chiang Kai-shek immediately placed him under house arrest for the rest of his life. Zhang Xueliang died in like 2001 in Hawaii. He was held under house arrest until like 1980s, and he was only allowed to leave Taiwan like after the 80s to go retire in Hawaii. But then when the Japanese realized these two forces are working together, so they start to launch a full-scale invasion of China in 1937 in the so-called Marco Polo incident, when they launched attack against Beijing. And so all these battles were raging in China way before the battles broke out in Europe, in the Eastern Front. So for the Chinese, it's basically a war since 1931 to 1945, a war of 14 years, but then so that's but what communists did was, when the Japanese came, much of northern China before were under various Chinese warlords that had nominal allegiance to the nationalist government. What the Japanese did, they destroyed all those the hold on power of these Chinese warlords, and it created a power vacuum in the countryside, because the Japanese were only interested in capturing the big cities, and the transportation, the main rail lines connecting each cities. So that gives a chance for the communists to move in to develop their bases in the countryside. And they started to take over the countryside behind the enemy lines. That's when, by the end of the war, by 1945, a lot of the Chinese communists were able to control much of the northern China countryside. They just didn't have all the Japanese were holed up in the big cities and along the railway links. And then when the Japan finally surrendered, there was a race between the communists and the nationalists to rush to those occupied cities to accept the Japanese surrender. This is where U.S. came in. U.S. deployed 60,000 troops, 50,000 Marines to carry out so-called Operation Beleaguered, with ostensible goal to surrender Japanese troops and civilians back to Japan. But their other very important role was also to ship Chiang Kai-shek's nationalist troops from southwest China, where they had been holed up, to northern China to accept the Japanese surrender, because they didn't want big cities like Beijing, Tianjin to fall into communist hands. And then this is how Chinese Civil War got started. And then then for 5 years, for 4 years, the war waged on, but the nationalists lost out. That's a whole fascinating topic. I recommend everyone to subscribe my podcast if you want the whole story.
Still, and just so because I didn't give you the heads up when you got on, just because I had somebody else's thing violin. Carl Jha, host of Silk and Steel podcasts, focused on China, surrounding regions, in history, culture, politics. He did this off the top of his head. Names and all. He did it off the top of his head. Where you can follow Carl on Twitter at Carl Jha. You can find his podcast on Twitter at Steel Silk In. And you can subscribe and support the podcast at patreon.com/Silk and Steel. So I just wanted to give you a bio. I wanted people to know where they can get that history. There's something else I want to hit you with also, which it's kind of a dough, and it should have been kind of seen in advance, but hashtag reasons. India and China explore border demarcation amid U.S. tensions. So in the same way that Russia and China, countries that, let's say, had tensions over the course of decades, where the U.S. would usually play one and go after the other, were pushed together because the United States came to some conclusion that we were a superpower. Well, same thing is happening now with China and India, where they were like, all right, look, we're going to get closer. Let's try to find a way to patch houses and maybe deal with this border issue. Or do you believe
Trump? Let's give Trump a Nobel Peace Prize already. that man has been the peacemaker of the world all over. I mean, this would have never happened if it wasn't for Donald Trump.
He's bringing countries together.
If it wasn't for Trump putting the squeeze on India the way that he had done, we probably would not have seen this China-India soft rapprochement we're seeing right now, because for a long time, India was practicing what they view as strategic autonomy, which means they can be in the anti-China bandwagon of Quad together with United States on one hand, but also be a founding member of BRICS on the other hand. This is how India saw that, how they could derive maximum advantage from both sides, right? But as we all know, United States have no partners. United States have no allies. U.S. can only have vassals. And this is why Donald Trump is publicly demanding India to come bend the knee and kiss the ring. And in particularly over the purchasing of Russian oil. So this is, Donald Trump said he's going to slap secondary sanctions on anybody who purchased Russian oil. Well, the largest purchase of Russian oil is number one, China. Number two is India. And there's nothing Trump can do about China because he does not want to return back to the month of May when each side were slapping each other with 100 over 100% tariffs, and on top of that, China, as I mentioned, China have got U.S. by the balls over the control of rare earth. They still can have to beg for rare earth export license for the Chinese Commerce Ministry. So China have cards. This is where India is a weaker party when it comes to negotiation with U.S. U.S. felt that they could squeeze India because he can. It doesn't expect India to hit back, right? Whereas now India is actually standing up and defending its sovereignty, because for India's perspective, it does not make sense to give up on its long-standing traditional friendship with Russia, which dates all the way back to the days of Soviet Union. And India also depends on on Russia for both weapon systems and oil. And Donald Trump wants India to completely cut off that ties and switch to buy energy from the United States and to buy weapons from the United States. And that just does not make sense from India's perspective.
No.
I think what happened with India is Indian leadership overestimated their influence in Washington, right? This is why they thought they could be, cozy up to U.S. and this is why they're also cozying up to Israel. They thought, okay, we're buddies, we're allies. But look, you can never compete with Israel for attentions of the United States. Israel is a special golden child. Nobody comes close. Nobody comes even close, to have that kind of relationship with the United States. So when you don't have a strong hand like China has, U.S. will try to bully you. And that's what happened. And this force India now is trying to seek a rapprochement with China. Now let's remember, many people call India the weakest link in the BRICS because India have a very different vision for BRICS from fellow BRICS members like Russia and China, because Russia and China wants BRICS to play the role of counterbalancing United States, counterbalancing the U.S.-led international world system as an alternative. Now, India is all for an alternative system, but India does not want BRICS to be perceived to be anti-West or anti-U.S. because India itself before was trying to cozy up to U.S. and try to get on good terms because India was expecting it to profit from U.S.-China tension. When Biden administration was forcing multinationals to decouple from China, to move the supply chain out of China in the so-called friendshoring, right? Like India was hoping to receive some of those manufacturing, like Apple. Apple was shifting more of its iPhone manufacturing to India in order to satisfy the U.S. market. But Trump just said, no, I didn't say I want you to make iPhones in India. I want you to make it in the United States. So that, I mean, I just got, and Peter Navarro just recently penned an article, I think in Financial Times, and it was going very hard on India. It's saying, oh, India is taking advantage of us. India is, taking advantage, and we can't trust doing sharing of military, advanced military technology to India because of India's ties with Russia and the BRICS. That could, all the military technology could go the other way, go to Russia and go to China. So now India has been denied all the benefit it tried to hope to receive from having a close tie with US, right? Because Donald Trump is slapping them left and right with tariffs. For another reason is because Donald Trump's ego. Because right after the Pakistan Indian conflict, Pakistan publicly thanked Trump for his role to mediate and Pakistan. What did Pakistan do? They nominated Trump for a Nobel Peace Prize, whereas India immediately said, no, it has nothing to do with Trump. Trump didn't do anything, and this is Trump they're dealing with. Trump with a large ego. All you have to do is just butter him up, man. Just like buttering up like Pakistan did. It's like, oh, you're so great. We nominate for you for Nobel Peace Prize. And by India publicly denying Trump's role, I mean, Trump is not gonna like that. This is
India
why
was
he's
pissed,
on.
by the way. They were
Oh, yeah,
pissed.
they're
They were
they're not
pissed.
happy. They're not
No.
happy because they were expecting a reciprocal relationship from United States, right? It's like we are doing your part, trying to help you contain China, and all you do is hit us with big sticks with no carrots, right? And but that's what U.S. does. U.S. wants unconditional surrender. You gotta bend your knee, and gotta go through the public humiliation ritual, right? Like what all the European leaders are doing right now in Washington. That's what Donald Trump wants to see happen. So this really forced India trying to seek more closer alignment with the rest of the BRICS countries because at least India still have some dignity left, unlike the European leaders.
Yes.
They're trying to salvage their own sovereignty and their own pride. And one of the thing Modi's when he appealed to his constituency in India is he's appeared as like tough defenders of Indian sovereignty, right? So there's no way he can back down in front of what is seen as obviously bullying tactic by Trump. And also another thing Trump wants is he wants India to get rid of all the tariffs, protecting its domestic farm market and allow American farm produce, which is heavily subsidized by the American government, by the way. And India cannot afford to do that because India has 60% of its population employed in the agriculture sector. And that just like a politically a no-go for the Modi government. So they would not back down on that. And this is why they're seeking realignment with China. And one of the biggest thorn on the side of the bilateral relationship between India and China is a border issue. So now they're trying to talk about demarcation of the border to calming down the tensions, and India is trying to reverse its restrictions on Chinese investment into India, because before 2021 China had like billions of dollars invested in Indian tech sector, but that fell off a cliff after Indian government started to ban the ones first to kick out Huawei. They because that's the thing that United States want its allies to do, like the Europeans, to kick out Huawei from the 5G network implementation. And then India is the first country to ban TikTok. This is where how US was just copying India in banning the TikTok. So now India is signaling they're ready to make it easier for Chinese investment to come in. Because previously BYD was about to open a joint venture to produce electric cars in India, and that got canned because the restrictions by the Indian government. But now they're ready. They're sending the signal. They're ready to play ball, and that's why the Chinese Prime Minister Wang Yi was recently visiting India, meeting with Modi to pave way, basically, for Modi's visit at the end of this month to China for the Shanghai Cooperation Organization meeting.
Oh, that's gonna be huge.
Yeah,
that's gonna be huge.
So give Trump a Nobel Prize, my man. He deserve it.
It's like these warring countries, they have now come together because of Donald Trump. I've shown you the clip, right, where Donald Trump punches Modi as opposed to hitting Putin. You would think, and what time is it? Okay, we have about 2 minutes. You would think that just rational man, that's all, not even bright man, just rational man, would say, they're the weak link to BRICS, so let's work with them, even if we need to take a mitten in dealing with them. But Trump's thing is, no, I need capitulation. That's what I need. Missing the history of India, the notion that a country that was a colony is going to somehow accept the United States trying to browbeat them into form. Oh, that was never going to go down well. And
India sees itself as an inheritor of ancient civilization, as a great power, as a great regional power. So they don't want to be treated as a pawn. They have more dignity than European leaders. I will say that.
But the European leaders seem to be pretty good on their knees. That's all bad.
Well,
but they seem to take to it.
they have been put in their position to do exactly that. I mean, all of them have been groomed from a young age through Atlanticist institutions to be Washington's bitch. I mean,
Yeah.
they're just doing their job.
Can you imagine Modi saying, "Daddy, don't go," in the way that they said in Europe? I can't imagine any other country saying that. And yet, you got the European leaders, "Daddy, don't go, don't leave us, Daddy." Carl, man, you have saved my ass this morning. You have my deepest appreciation forever for that. Carl Jha. Carl Jha is host of Silk and Steel podcast, focused on China and surrounding regions and their history, culture, and politics. You heard a bit of it this morning where he just did that on the fly, where it's like, "Carl, I know we hadn't talked about this, but hey, can you give me some history on the start of the war?" And you just goes into minute detail of that stuff. Oh, you're fantastic. You can follow Carl on Twitter at Carl Jha. You can follow his podcast on Twitter at Steel Silk In. And you can subscribe and support his podcast on patreon.com/silk and steel. You're fantastic, Carl. Thank you, my man.
Anytime, Jamar.
All right, be safe. Thank you, Carl. Yeah, Carl knows his stuff. He just like just off the. There are a few people who could do that, where you just ask them, "Hey, I know we hadn't talked about this, but can we, bring this up?" And they just go into minute detail of the things that are taking place. I want to bring in another damn good guest, a good friend of the show, Arnaud Develay. How you doing, man? You doing okay this morning? Well, it's not morning for you. It's midday for you.
Afternoon, actually. Yes. I'm doing fine, Jamal. How are you?
I'm doing okay. Not too bad. Carl saved my ass, so I'm appreciative. Arnaud Develay, he's author, political analyst, and international lawyer specializing in international criminal law. The latest book, Foreign Entanglements, Biden, Ukraine, and the Fracturing of American Political Consensus. Arnaud, there's a lot of big news that has taken place. And so you are the man I really want to talk to. For one, give me your take on what is taking place in regards to the European meeting, outside of just the humiliation of that meeting, and we can step into it from there. This is one of the pictures that is going around the world where people are effectively laughing at Europe. All of these leaders with Trump, giving them their marching orders and telling them what to do. And Ursula von der Leyen, he kicked her out the room at one point. He told her to leave. This is about leaders. You're not the leader. Nobody elected you. And then to make it even worse, he gets up in the middle of the conversation and says, "I'm going to go call Putin. That's what I'm going to do." And they're like, hey, wait, you want to do that now? Yes, I want to do that right now. And just gets out the room and just goes and walks and calls Putin. What the hell? What the hell? Give me a take on this, on just the weirdness of all of this, a parade of buffoons from Europe following Zelensky to be his comfort animal, and get utterly humiliated, completely humiliated. Give me your thoughts.
Well, where do I start? So much to unpack here. Well, let's make one thing clear from the get-go. Trump hates all that bunch of people. Maybe Meloni gets a pass, but by and large, everybody else on that panel, he just cannot stand them. And it's not as much a personal animosity as it is basically an animosity that stems out of being the alpha male in a room full of political midgets. And so the very way they went about trying to get included in the discussions, and they begged and they cried and they moaned, and the whole thing was just pathetic from the get-go. All this to, in effect, trying to coach Zelensky in order to avoid a repeat of what happened back in Feb.
Yeah.
In the Oval Office. So, and if you want my opinion, with a mitigated result, because if you recall this sequence when the guy says, there's a journalist asking Zelensky whether or not, he could be in a position to hold elections. And Zelensky says, well, it's not in our constitution during wartime. And he says that right next to Trump. So Trump, and I was like, oh my God, here comes the blow up. And Trump kind of like looks at him with a smirk and goes, oh, well, I know what I got to do in 2028.
So I'm at war, I don't have to go to have elections? He's like, oh, that's good to know. Yeah.
So I'm thinking, what S show,
Yeah.
this is terrible. It looks terrible that all the markings of a performative, let's get a summit for a summit's sake, get a few photo ops, but nothing really substantial came out of it. In a way, either from Alaska or nor in DC. So we're not necessarily more advanced on the substance of the matter than we were a week and a half ago, I would say. And right now, we keep hearing this notion of deploying European troops. That's a red line for the Russians. We have Meloni throwing Article 5-like mechanism. So what? I guess you would insert those in that series of bilateral treaties, mutual assistance, military assistance you guys signed individually with Ukraine. Is that it? So, essentially, it looks like they're trying to get around the prohibition on NATO per se being included in the equation of a problem, a solution to the problem, by inserting something that speaks like a dog, barks like a dog, and walks like a dog. It's essentially NATO. I mean, let's recall to our viewers that World War I and World War II became world wars because of those kind of arrangements.
Right.
I mean, if not for those alliances between France and the UK on one side and Poland on the other, we would not have had either one of those two declaring war on Germany. Keeping in mind that there were already arrangements for the Czechoslovakia with the Sudetenland. And that somehow was averted, in March 1939 in extremis. So to the extent we have a political bloc, i.e. the EU, which is politically in its own existential crisis, that is about to get the sole reason for this militaristic discourse that they've been having the last 6-7 months. This rearming program, and trying to pickpocket, their own constituents at the tune of 800 billion in order to down the road be able to confront Russia, be it in 2028, 2029. But, they cannot step back from this. A lot of political communication has gone into it. And so how would they now somehow content themselves with, going back to the humdrum of domestic politics in a situation where their economy is ruined? There's a lot of political instability in all of those countries. It's a non-starter. So I think they're trying to somehow, massage Trump. They're trying to preserve his ego, don't get in his way, but somehow suggest, what are essentially new iteration of the same thing. To make a long story short, right? Then there's the issue of Zelensky. I mean, what Zelensky is not legitimate. So how can we even have him meet with Putin?
Right.
Short of wanting to, breathe life into this guy's political career, which is pretty moribund by now. I mean, you give him a huge rehabilitation on the international stage in doing so. And so I don't understand that. I posted a couple of postings on the issue, which basically called into question the fact that this notion that you would want to resolve, the conflict before the guns go silent. This would require. They're going about it the wrong way. You got to have an election first, or you got to have a decree that hands over the reins of power to the head of the Rada. At the very least, someone who's legally entitled, ability to sign documents, because what tells us that by the time, we have a somewhat resolving formula of the conflict, then they decide to go and hold elections, which we know is going to happen down the road. We have many objective indications of that, not least of which is the Vogue portfolio layout of Zaluzhny. They are prepping up. Somebody in the UK immediately denied that she was, essentially gathering a team of pundits and election experts. When this was put out there on the internet.
Yeah.
So when they deny it, it means it's true. So they're prepping the guy, and it's almost like a fait accompli. They might get a couple of other candidates to give the chance for perception management, but the next guy will be Zaluzhny. Well, Zaluzhny is a military man. He has the respect from the troops all the way down to the rank and files. And so at some point, following his own script, he could very well say, well, you know what? I don't even need to get into whether or not Russia is respecting its own obligation per what has been agreed on. I can just say, this agreement is legally void. It has no value, and nobody would contest that.
Right.
So I don't get it. I don't understand what the logic is with this. This guy, the first order of business, if you're serious about peace, is to remove this guy. I said it 7 months ago. I made a podcast about it called Why Putin and Trump should get rid of Zelensky. That's the first order of business. I don't know. Do whatever you need to do. I don't care about the particulars, but the guy can't remain in the equation. It's impossible. So there we are now, and we're trying to make a souffle with remnants of yesterday's dinner. I mean, it's ridiculous. And then again, so then we have this issue of land swap. So we have Zelensky, because Zelensky, being toxic as he is, he keeps on giving. The guy keeps on giving. So he goes out and says, constitutionally speaking, I cannot hand out or negotiate or discuss any kind of conceding of my land. Today, again, Zelensky says there's no way we're going to legally recognize the illegal annexation of some of Ukraine's eastern regions. Are you there?
Yeah, I'm here. I'm listening.
Oh, sorry.
I've been trying to.
Yeah.
When I've been watching other people do their streams, they've done.
Yeah.
When the person is speaking, they try to get the mainstream. But I'm sorry.
All right. No, it's okay. Thank you. So we have this issue right there. The land concessions. We have Zelensky saying, by the same token, that he is adamantly against providing as a precondition for the land swapping discussion to take place, complete control over the DPR and LNR over to Russia.
Right.
Pretexting that it would provide an anchor point to Russian troops so they could extend their offensive westward, which is already happening anyway. But so it looks like at every step of the way, the guy is basically saying, no, this I cannot do. No, this I cannot, which prompted Lavrov to say, well, it's funny because when it comes down to suppressing ethnic minorities' right to speak their own language, then the Constitution in this case does not apply.
Yep.
So we have three main situations, three main problems. This ineligibility, this lack of standing, this lack of ability to sign any kind of document, and I would even say, for that matter, to even negotiate and discuss, be part of any kind of process. This disqualifies the whole thing right there. Ab initio. That's number one. Number two, we have the issue of the Europeans pushing for what resembles very strongly, in separate parts, a collective agreement, security agreement, with a little bit of sprinkling of trying to get European troops on the ground, with even the American not denying that they would be willing to provide a no-fly zone mechanism, through their own. Yeah, so I don't know. And then last but not least, third point is the land swapping. Well, the land swapping is those people voted, overwhelmingly to rejoin the Russian Federation. You, Zelensky, and your regime, you trampled their rights, their fundamental rights, for 8 straight years, at minima. And in the end, we got in. We prevented the genocide, which was looming. And because the situation was somewhat in a legal gray zone, we had to put into place referenda so their right to self-determination would be taken into account. And we know what the answer was. So what? So when we see now that Crimea, the notion of Crimea being Russian, is being now somehow bit by bit fed to Western audiences on mainstream networks, what would prevent that same thing from happening with the Donbass and the Novorossiya regions? I don't understand. So this is my take on it. It's a nothing burger to me. It's a non-starter. Those people are not serious. They're trying to win, to extend the situation, to prolong it to such an extent that de facto they are putting Trump in a position where he has no choice but to go on an outburst and blame somebody. The thing is, the Russians, I think, understood this, and they brought a lot of elements which were not openly discussed. Because the one thing that comes out of those interactions between Witkoff and the Kremlin for the last 3 months or so is that we don't really know what the specifics are. We don't really have a readout of those conversations.
Right.
And for good reason, because as soon as you put some content out there, objectively collected content out of meetings, within a week or so, everything is being sabotaged to make sure that this whole thing does not have any follow-up. So I think they've decided to basically keep it under the rug. And I would suspect that the idea is to create such commercial and economic joint ventures intermeshing with the Trump administration that he could then at some point down the road, once he realizes that, which he knows already, that the Europeans are not going to play ball with this, which is why he insists on them buying for 100 billion worth of US wares, because he wants to, before he extricates himself, before he cuts the Gordian knot, which he will have to do at some point, he has to cut through the Gordian knot. There's no easy way, because he tries to plug one hole and another hole pops out. This is what's been going on from the White House perspective. So the best thing to do is feed the notion that he's done with the program, get as much advantages as possible, negotiate with the Russians behind the Europeans' back, get some guarantees, economic guarantees, get paid, in other words, right? You're a businessman, that's what you want. You want to get paid. And at the time when everything is in place, the contracts are signed, preliminary steps have been implemented in that regard, protocols have been exchanged, memorandum of understanding, then you dump the Europeans, make sure you collect all the money first, from them, and then have them go on their sweet way and let them flail around, that's, I think, is from the Russian perspective, I think this is what they're trying to do. They're trying to make it such a sweet deal for Trump that he can turn around and tell his base, look what I got for this. For the rest, I tried my best. You saw for yourself those people are not reasonable. They're supposed to be our allies, and they're not playing ball. So I do what's best for America. I quit and let them handle it. And JD Vance actually said that much yesterday during his interview. He said it's Europe's continent. It's for them to protect it. But this actually fits within the restrainers faction of the deep state, US deep state agenda. This is what they want. They want to subcontract European operations to the Europeans and extricate themselves out of this.
Yeah, delegation of labor, delegation of responsibility, in a sense. I was about to say I disagree with you until you got to that last part, which I actually agree with. Because look, Donald Trump says, I always say habitual liars lie. But Donald Trump gives metadata that gives you some kind of clue to what he's trying to do. And so he will tell anybody whatever he needs to tell them. And so if the Europeans, with a few exceptions, when the Europeans come in and say, we need a ceasefire, and Trump is like, yeah, we're not having a ceasefire. That's not what's going to happen. We need them to fight. And it's like, whoa, that's interesting. When he tells Americans, yeah, we're not having a ceasefire. That's not happening. And he's very clear on that point. We are not having a ceasefire. But I think he would say, yeah, we may have air cover. We maybe, I don't know, maybe, who knows, Putin may be okay with it. But, I think all these guys are trying to fight it. But yeah, I don't think it's going to be an issue. That says nothing. That is a nothing statement. And even when Rubio goes up, he makes nothing statements. And so it's like you've given the Europeans nothing, just air, while the same token you seem to have given the Russians something in the context that is shifted. I think what I disagree with you is the nothing burger part. I don't think it's a nothing burger. I think the Alaska summit is different. For what, 7 months, Donald Trump has made this argument that he is for a ceasefire. He wants a ceasefire. He's threatening Putin. He's passing sanctions. And then all of a sudden, overnight, he flips. And he flips to the Russian point of view that it needs to be a permanent deal, not a ceasefire. And he argues it needs to be a permanent deal over and over and over again. He brings the Europeans over and tells them to their face, no, we're not doing a ceasefire. We're doing a major peace deal, period. That's what we're going to do. Now, the catch becomes the reason that the Europeans were fire and thunder before they came to see Trump, and then while they were with Trump, they're poodles, is because what they know is that daddy can always leave. And if you piss daddy off, daddy will leave. So to your point, the U.S. always has the whip hand of being able to walk. I don't think Trump wants to walk. I think Trump wants to deal. And I think he wants to break, at the very least, Ukrainians down to where they will willingly accept the deal as opposed to having to being pushed into a deal, which is the reason why I think he keeps making the point of saying they need to fight. Effectively, Ukraine needs to lose worse.
Well, they need to keep losing territory. That's what they need to do, because they're not as much fighting as losing a war. And so he's basically taken into consideration the military reality, and he knows that each passing day, but you would think the Europeans would see this as much as anybody else with a commonsensical approach on the conflict. So when I say it's a nothing burger, is obviously they still need to bleed some more, and for Ukraine to lose more territories, because this is what's going to happen. I mean, right now we're talking about 4 oblasts plus Crimea, but if things remain as they are now, we're not, somehow getting a consensual approach on some of those fundamental elements, which I discussed earlier. It could be 6, it could be 8, and it could happen faster than we think, because it's an exponential process, militarily speaking, right now. I mean, they have no time to even reestablish defensive lines. They're just running away. Basically, the whole line is at some areas dissolving. They sent like a battalion, elite Azov battalion, to try to furiously, reverse some of the losses last week in the Pokrovsk cauldron area, and that failed. So I think they run out of options. This is we're close to a breakthrough, and I think the Dnipro region, the Kharkov region, the Sumy region would soon become, being a proposed referenda, before the year is over.
I do think, God, I got to play this clip before you go. Since you mentioned the weapons, it's not just the weapons. It's not just the weapons. So listen to Scott Benson when he pointed this out. This is outrageous. And if you're a European, I think I said the other day, if you're German and you are sitting here listening to this, oh God, you have to be outraged. This is Benson. Listen to what he says.
10%. I think President Trump is very vigilant. Right now, we are selling arms to the Europeans, who are then selling them on to the Ukrainians, and President Trump's taking a 10% markup on the arms. So maybe that 10.
Did you hear that? He's selling weapons to the Europeans, basically selling weapons to the Ukrainians who Europeans are going to buy, and he's charging Europe a 10% markup on the weapons that he's selling them just for hashtag reasons.
Well, he has to finance that Riviera in Gaza.
That's outrageous.
Investment
and they're not even hiding that, by the way. They're saying that on Fox.
No, they don't care.
Yeah, we're charging you guys a markup. Thanks for that.
And the Europe is like, thank you, Daddy. Give me more. Hit me some more. Hit me. Yeah, it's crazy. No, it's crazy. It's surreal. I know.
And there's 2 more things. So, or this is one thing, but it's quotes by Lavrov, because Lavrov gave an interview, and in the interview he says 2 things that are newsworthy. One, he points out where's it? Right here. If the Zelensky regime now rejects all the characteristics already, talks about nuclear weapons, joining NATO, about abandoning neutrality, then they're probably the very grounds that were the basis for recognizing Ukraine as an independent state would disappear. Effectively, look, if you don't come to Jesus, you will not exist going further as an independent state. Period. Period. The other quote that Lavrov made has to do with Donald Trump that I also find to be interesting. Because as I point out, habitual liars lie. He's lying to one. He's either lying to the Europeans or to the Russians. So Lavrov says, I reiterate, the Alaska summit demonstrated that the United States administration is genuinely committed to a settlement, not to rearm Ukraine for war, as occurred after the Minsk agreements, but to ensure the crisis never reoccurs, guaranteeing the lawful rights of all states in the region and peoples inhabiting them. This understanding was reaffirmed during President Putin's late-night phone call with Donald Trump yesterday. So Trump got up, left the Europeans. I'm going to talk to Putin right now. In the middle of the meeting with Europeans, calls Putin, and according to Lavrov, reiterated, we're not going to rearm Ukraine like the Minsk agreements. We're going to deal with the actual reason and the root cause for the war. That's amazing. That's amazing on so many levels. Right here, the understanding to reaffirm in the late night phone call that U.S. President Donald Trump yesterday, in which was briefed by our leader in the discussions with Vladimir Putin and the so-called European support group. He reaffirmed that there will be no Minsk agreements 3.0. Now, I'm worried if the Russians actually believe
it seriously looks like a 3.0, if you ask me.
Yeah.
From my perspective.
Yeah.
Yes.
Wait, said it again. You say it looks like a...
The whole thing. I mean, you know, obviously we don't have access to the most salient information, but from what I've been observing the last 10 days, and let's recall also the the context in which this flurry, this diplomatic flurry got initiated in the first place. You know, it looks like everything that's done quickly like this to begin with, it shows a complete lack of substance. The foundations of the house are very creaky, to say the very least. But to the extent, okay, well, let's go with the flow. You know, what I'm seeing right now is a Minsk 3. Yeah, exactly. Basically,
wait,
we
real quick.
freeze.
I'm sorry to interrupt. Let me interrupt you real quick. How do we know that they weren't having back channel negotiations? Lukashenko.
You're right. That's what I'm saying. We don't know everything. We don't know everything. Okay. But you know, I can only, from my own perspective, with what I have, give you my feel for it.
Okay.
And the feel is that, you know, right now, obviously they have no options but to put a freeze to it by any stretch, hook and crannies. They need to get that freeze. Otherwise, they will lose the whole thing.
Yeah.
So of course they're going to be talking, you know, floating ideas which resembles what the Russians want. But the fine point is what will determine, you know, whether or not this has been accomplished. And the devil is in the details. And those 3 points that I put forward to me, you know, that's not a good start. That's not a good start. I mean, how can you have Zelensky involved in any kind of negotiation? That beats me. And how can you not have a ceasefire in that sense to have an election, which will then allow them, because in an election, you have the campaign. You have to campaign first, right? So you have 3 months campaigning, then you have 3 months to, you know, somehow organize the election, you know, proper. So you're providing them with a window to regroup. And meanwhile, you get 100 billion. You know, you get all the weapons that you need. You refit your defense system. You know, you do everything you can to perpetuate the conflict, because that's the end game, is to perpetuate the conflict. It's not to win it; it's to perpetuate it. Keep killing, you know, Russians. Keep exhausting them. You know, that's the end game to me. So anytime, you know, I'll be kind of a maximalist on this, but I think like short for the Russian armed forces to go and effect a good garden variety bona fide regime change in Kiev, and then and only then bring the West and agree on how we're going to refit what is left of the Ukrainian entity. has no legs. That's my take on this.
Yeah.
And I think I heard Mark Sloboda might not have been saying it in those exact same words, but we're not far apart on this. It's just,
Yeah. Mark's
you
thing
have
is they
to,
should keep going.
yeah, you have to keep going. Yeah.
Yeah.
You have, because, you're going to end up with a banderist regime no matter what happens. Even if you remove the clown, you're going to end up with the big oath of the illusion. So, but they're the same. I mean, the guy, for those who might doubt it, there's pictures of him galore on the internet with a Bandera portrait behind on the wall. So now you need to decapitate and denazify or debanderize, whatever you want to call it. You have to do a year zero, Ukraine year zero, and start from scratch. And it took 7 years in Japan for the occupation, the US occupation after the defeat of Imperial Japan under MacArthur to from 45 to 52. The SCAP was, basically completely reconditioning Japanese society. And that's what you need to do in Ukraine, because you need to go deep to the roots of all those manuals and school books, which to this day today are indoctrinating youngsters in Ukraine. So even if you get rid of the regime in that first step, you need to stick around and make sure that the kids who are coming right behind it don't grow up to be, easily manipulable by agent provocateur. So that's where we are right now. I mean, that's my perspective on the whole thing.
Fantastic breakdown. Fantastic breakdown.
Thank you.
Really good. Thank you. Arnaud Develay. He is author, political analyst, and international lawyer specializing in international criminal law. His latest book, Foreign Entanglements, Biden, Ukraine, and the Fracturing of American Political Consensus. Thank you for this, man. I really do appreciate it. Thank you.
My pleasure, Jamal.
Enjoy the rest of your day. All right. Arnaud gave a great breakdown of this. It's a tough one, right? It's a tough one. I mean, do you really leave the same Banderites in office at the point where you get rid of Zelensky? If you're putting in Zelensky, have you changed anything? The same people are in power. What stops this from happening again in a few years? You can change the Constitution again, right? Yeah. No, he has a really good point. And I think Mark makes the point too. Keep going. By the way, Maloney, not saying bad anything about you. Not saying bad anything about you. I know nothing about your politics. But nothing bad about you. Maloney is funny to me, and I mean that in the nicest way. So of everybody who's at the meeting, everybody else is given this kind of political face, even though it's deeply humiliating, and they know it's deeply humiliating. And Maloney is like, why am I here? And she hides nothing. It's like she is just hiding absolutely nothing. I don't want to be here. I don't like these people. This is humiliating. Why am I here? It is the funniest thing in the world to see her facial expressions when everybody else has this look on their face. Yeah, she was not feeling it, to put it mildly. She was not feeling it. So my next guest, she's going to come on in a moment. We're going to hit the issue of Haiti. I am deeply fortunate to have her join me. And I think she's so familiar to me, even though this is her first time coming on the show. And I think I've either read her article. In fact, I may have read her article when we were covering the events that were taking place in Haiti on the radio station. Whether it was that or whether it was somewhere else, either way, I'm happy that she could join me. So it should be good. It should be good. I want to hit something that Donald Trump said. I hit this yesterday, but yesterday's show sucks. So I kind of want to hit this again and cut this specifically, individually, as its own thing. And I want it to be like 15 minutes. I don't want it to be long, but like 15. So Trump said something that much of the media just missed. Like they just fundamentally missed. And when I had the opportunity to look over the press conference, I was like, whoa, that's interesting. If you ask the question sometimes of why is Trump telling me this, you come up with interesting answers sometimes, because it's, as I point out, metadata. It's not necessarily the content of what he's saying. It's just the overarching talk about it. So right here, Trump is asked, you had mayors asked Trump about a ceasefire. You have all of these other members beseeching Donald Trump for this, for that, for guarantees, security guarantees, something like Article 5. And they effectively walk out with nothing, at the very least, nothing concrete. And you know, I keep saying habitual liars lie. And I say that because I want to make the point of saying, under normal circumstances, when Trump is lying, he's lying to our detriment. He's saying stuff is like, okay, dude, you're murdering all of these people and you're claiming that this is not a genocide. Or you're claiming that the economy is booming and we can see all of these prices going up for everyday Americans. You're claiming tariffs aren't taxes when tariffs are indeed taxes. Those are lies that are to our detriment. That also means, though, that he lies to world leaders. So when he's talking to Iran and he tells Iran, yeah, there's not going to be any attacks. Wink, wink. Why are you in negotiations? And then Israel has this decapitation strike, or at the very least attempted decapitation strike, where Trump comes on and is pretty boisterous. Like, we told you should have negotiated and all this other stuff. Up to the point where Israel is getting taken apart. And then he comes out with another tweet that seems like he's running scared in the basement somewhere, saying, hey, don't hit our stuff, don't hit our stuff. We had nothing to do with it, blah, blah, blah. Habitual liars lie. Who is Trump lying to in this? Is he lying to the Europeans or is he lying to the Russians? Now, I would argue that when Trump goes on Fox and says stuff like, yeah, we may have air power, we may, who knows, I don't know, maybe, who knows, maybe the Europeans, I know they want to put their people down, and maybe they may do that, but I don't know if they're going to do that. That is content without any information to it, nor is it committal. It is just words, 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 words. They mean nothing. When Rubio comes on and says, well, maybe we'll do this, and he talks kind of vaguely about something like an Article 5. Again, that's very vague. And to have any deal, you need the Russians to say yes. And the Russians are never going to say yes to that deal. Both of them know the Russians are not going to say yes to that deal. They were obviously back-channel communications that were taking place between the Trump administration and the Kremlin. They've apparently been talking for months. And the Alaska meeting seemed to be the culmination of whatever those talks were, with a context being set of the battlefield. It is the losing on the battlefield that set the context. Now, let's be very clear. Donald Trump is acting like he's the negotiator, like he's a third-party negotiator. Like, I don't have anything to do with this. This is Joe Biden's war. I don't have anything to do with this. You are a U.S. president. It is your war. You're not a third-party negotiator. You're still sending arms. You're still giving intelligence. You're still a party to this conflict. So this is not, look at Ukraine losing. This is America failed. That needs to be drilled down. That is the thing that doesn't necessarily seem to be floating out in regards to the way that the media is talking about this. America fundamentally, completely failed in its objective in this moment. And in the context of failing in its objective, Donald Trump is trying to act as if this level of failure is somehow a peace deal that he is doing between these two parties, as opposed to the fact that the United States was intimately involved in starting that war, prosecuting that war, and now effectively withdrawing from that same war. Trump is in a fix, though. He's in a box. He doesn't seem to want to go out and use the powers at his disposal. I'm pulling out intel. I'm pulling out intelligence. Well, intelligence, same difference. I'm pulling out all of the Americans that are there. I'm doing all of that stuff. And I'm stopped giving you money and stop giving you intelligence. I don't have anything to do with this. And if the Brits come to me for weapons, I'm not selling them squat. That ends the war. He doesn't want to do that. That seems to be too aggressive for him. He seems to want to deal with them coming to terms on their own in order to get that deal. Again, this is not about primacy. The U.S. is not giving up this notion of trying to do primacy, but they will do a backtrack to freeze whatever is there in order to try to maintain some semblance of a face-saving mechanism, some semblance of position, as opposed to it all falling down, which it legitimately could. Ukraine is a big country, but it can fall, especially when Donbass is taken. Russia at that point has capability of attacks all through the country with a very difficult defense, to put it mildly, for the Ukrainian side. So I hope you get my point. This is the box that Donald Trump finds himself in. I don't necessarily want to go hard on the Europeans and Zelensky in order to forcibly end it, because I'm going to get screamed at that I ended the war and I failed and I lost the war for the Ukrainians, as if they were going to somehow win it if I didn't do that. Or if I didn't do that. In the other sense, they're talking trash to me. Yes, they're beseeching me, but when they leave, they talk all sorts of trash. I'm not giving up squat. I'm not doing this. I'm not doing that. Okay, so I need to somehow utilize leverage in a way to get my will, to get what I want, without entirely exerting it in an overt and heavy-handed way where they would scream at me that I'm somehow helping the Russians. On top of that, I need the neocons in my party to shut up. Trump is a neocon, but I need Lindsey Graham to shut up, and I need the Europeans to shut up and leave me to my devices. So whatever I'm working out with Putin will remain private. I usually have a difficult time doing that, but I'm going to do that now. I'm going to have to show some level of diligence. On the other side, I would utilize my superpower of lying and tell them whatever they need to hear. So there's that. Air power, hey, that's not a bad idea. Air power, that's not a bad idea at all. That's an interesting idea that you're saying right there. Article 5, that's super interesting. I mean, it's not really NATO, but we can give them guarantees. Maybe we can do that. Maybe we can support you in doing that. We're not going to put troops on the ground, but maybe we'll support you in doing that. It's raining outside. Really, it's raining outside? I thought it was like, yeah, maybe it is raining outside. He tells them what they want to hear. Now, of course, the problem with this is you may be telling the Russians what they want to hear, right? Habitual liars lie. And the U.S. has a history of lying overtly and tearing up any particular agreement that doesn't suit their interests at a heartbeat. I have to think, though, that the Russians know that. And there is no such thing as Minsk 3 without the Russians agreeing to Minsk 3. Minsk 2 was, we suckered the Russians. Okay, that was Minsk. So how can you have Minsk 3 without we suckered the Russians, when the Russians are in a prime position in regards to the battlefield that has set the context of everything that is effectively taking place now? Trump, when having a conversation at the White House with all of these European leaders, came out and said this.
Rebuild
and just to be clear, they're asking him, hey, what about a ceasefire? We need a ceasefire, right? We need a ceasefire. The Russians are kicking our ass. We need a ceasefire. Listen to what he says when asked about the whole ceasefire. Got to stop it right there. He says, they have to fight. They have to fight. It may be a disadvantage for one side or the other, so, they need to fight. And he makes the point of saying, the 6 imaginary deals that I made, they kept fighting. Yes, I guess in the imaginary deals, fair enough. Let me go back to the last part, because that's the part that's important.
one side or the other. But all of these deals I made without even the mention of the words ceasefire. I don't think you need a ceasefire. If you look at the 6 deals that I'm supposed to in 2 weeks or 1 week or whatever it takes, but we can work a deal where we're working on a peace deal while they're fighting. They have to fight.
They have to fight. They have to fight. And then he points out, look, one side may not necessarily like the fact that the other side is rearming. Yeah. And one side may be put at a disadvantage if they stop fighting. Yes, that's true. How do I know it's true? Because Sarah Bils from DD Geopolitics has told me that it's true. When you have a number like 1.7 million people that have died over the course of a war, who is Trump talking about in that? No, he's not saying Ukraine is losing miserably. And if, a ceasefire would only assist them to rearm, because these stupid idiots are just going to give them more weapons, more materials and everything else. And it's going to keep the war going longer. I don't want that. He doesn't say it that way. One side, well, obviously, the side that's getting taken to the wood chipper is the side that lost 1.7 million human beings. That's an astonishing number. Trump knows that. So when he's making this point, let's add in different words that equal the same thing, like a math equation. Ukraine is being taken apart. If we pause the conflict in a ceasefire, which I don't have the power to do anyway, if we pause it, which I don't have the power to do, well, you guys are going to rearm them. That's not really what I want, because nothing that you do is going to change the context of the battlefield, considering we've already have given them like 3 or 4 different armies. They're set. 2, they need to fight. So pursuant to the first point of, well, one side, Ukraine, is getting eaten alive and being put through a wood chipper. Second point, I need them to fight. Put the 2 statements together. I need Ukraine to fight to continue to get put through a wood chipper. It's in the language. It's in the thing that he's effectively saying. Mainstream media, for whatever particular reason, did bring up, it's like, well, wait a minute, it's Ukraine that's being taken apart, which is why these buffoons want to keep this war going. So if you want them to fight and you need them to fight, do you need them to fight for the Ukrainians to continue to get taken apart? Well, no reporter in that room can say that, because no reporter in that room is allowed to bring up the fact that Ukraine lost 1.7 million human beings and that they're getting taken apart and losing territory left and right. They can't plug their gaps. And they're dragging people and press ganging them out of their houses in front of their kids in their dog. It's that. Is it possible that what Trump is saying is that, look, I don't want to use political leverage by withdrawing everything in order to force Zelensky and the Europeans to heal? I don't want to do that. The fact that all of these parade of buffoons, again, not you, Maloney, but the other parade of buffoons, were sitting there, gets across that they understand that Trump has that power and that leverage that he can always exploit. No more CIA, no more people on the ground, no more money from non-governmental organizations, none of the imperialist pleasure, none of that stuff. I'm pulling it all, and I'm not selling weapons. He can do it. He's not doing it. I'm saying the fact that the European leaders are sitting there in the way that they're sitting there, they know that he had the power and the leverage to do it. Hell, he could say, I'm going to 50% tariffs tomorrow. Make a deal. He doesn't want to do that. He wants agreement. He wants agreement. How do you get agreement in a situation where you can't overtly and directly use the leverage at your disposal? Let the war drag on. Let the losing side lose, even worse, until it gets to the point that the losing side falls to its knees, it looks up at the sky, and it comes to Jesus on its own. I could be wrong. I could be wrong. Again, I'm only interpreting what the metadata of what's being said. And the fact that Donald Trump has flipped on this idea of ceasefire after 8 months of calling for a ceasefire into permanent peace, whatever that means, with Vladimir Putin. And in doing so, effectively listened to the Europeans a few days before and flipped on a dime on those Europeans where they were just shocked by the whole thing. He obviously has no issue in lying to the Europeans or anybody else for that matter. But it's going in a particular direction is what I'm trying to point at. And when you add in the context that's taking place on the ground, that there's nothing they can do to change the context on the ground. And I strongly believe that all of this talk that's taking place about US air power, all this stuff, you require the Russian consent, which you're never going to get. And none of that stuff happens until after a deal, which you're never going to get if that's what you're trying to add into the deal. So yeah, I come to an assessment that they are moving in a particular direction. I don't think it's a nothing burger. I think Trump is trying to leverage, as grim as it sounds, the war in order to get Zelensky to a point where he's willing to, at the very least, say, Uncle, Daddy, stop the big bad man, bare-chested, riding a bear, from hitting me. The flaw in this is that he may never say that. That's the flaw. That's the flaw. Trump doesn't necessarily want to have a collapse, but he may be betting that before we get to the point of collapse, that there will be saner heads to say, stop. He could be wrong. He could be wrong. I don't even think that's the Europeans want, to be honest. I think the Europeans are perfectly fine with every Ukrainian, every man, woman, child, dog, cat, tick, roach, rat, and every other animal dying in Ukraine, with Russia taking over and ending up in a guerrilla war for 10 years. I could be wrong. As I always tell you, never mistaken the coherent for the true. Never mistaken the coherent for the true. Okay, 20 minutes is not horrible. 20 minutes is not horrible. 30, what's up? 20 minutes is not horrible. I wanted to go through that. All right, the other thing that I think is super fascinating that took place, Lavrov is a beast, so there's that. But beyond Lavrov making those statements about, do I want to cover JD Vance? I'm conflicted on whether I want to cover JD Vance, because JD Vance is really not the principal, but I think he's been too cute by half in what he's saying to take a turn from a leak. Where he's, I'll show the video. We have time. We have a little bit of time. So this is Vance in an interview, and Vance comes out and talks about the conversation that Trump had with Vladimir Putin. Now, again, I need to point out the context of this conversation because it's just outlandish. Funny, but outlandish. Trump is in a meeting with the Europeans. He's literally talking to the Europeans. And he pops up, I'm going to call Putin, just out the blue. And they're like, sir, there are certain protocols for doing that. These are the Europeans that you can't really do that. There are protocols for doing it. No, I'm just going to call the guy. I'm going to talk to the guy. He says this.
You just need a president who will pick up the phone and call somebody.
Okay, I need you to start at the beginning, JD. Let's try this again.
It was like 1 a.m. Moscow time, and they had no anticipation. So we're actually in the East Wing of the White House, and the president says, we've had a pretty good meeting. I'm going to go call Vladimir Putin and see what he says about it. And everybody's like, oh, you're going to call him next week? And he's like, no, what time is it in Moscow? Let's call him right now. And I think one of the things I've realized about President Trump's leadership is he cuts through the BS of some of these diplomatic protocols and just says, I'm going to get things done. If I want to talk to somebody, I'm going to talk to somebody. You had a lot of the Europeans who were saying, no, there needs to be proper, vetting, and the teams have to prepare the phone call and blah, 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 blah. And the president was like, no. I want to talk to the guy. I'm going to talk to the guy. And I think that kind of no holds barred, no BS diplomacy is.
Is that really it? Is that really it? Like, come on, Donald Trump is a consummate bullshitter. Let's just call it what it is. Trump lies as easily as he breathes. The idea that you just need somebody who's going to cut through the mess like a businessman. He just wanted to cut through the mess in the middle of the meeting with the Europeans. That's when he needed at that moment to cut through the mess. Or was it just outright contempt of the people he was sitting there with? I think it was contempt. I think he didn't like those people. He didn't respect those people. All of those people are sitting around him, begging him for things. Please, can we do this? Please, can we do that? Hey, what about this? And Trump knows that many of those world leaders were working against them in the elections because they were going for Biden. And had a lot to say before they showed up at the White House and turned up. Please, Daddy. Please. Please, Daddy, don't do this. Please, Daddy, don't do that. Please, Daddy, help us with this. It's pathetic. It's pathetic. For all of the media that is complaining about Donald Trump's meeting with Putin, and they're making this case of saying, well, Donald Trump, laid down for Putin or whatever else. You people are bewilderingly stupid. You are so unfamiliar with looking at people dealing with each other as equals that you just don't know what it looked like. This meeting that took place in the White House between all of the European leaders, that is not dealing with people as equals. That's something else. I'm saying that under normal circumstances, when the US is dealing with another world leader, Trump has taken every opportunity to humiliate pretty much every world leader that has come and sat down with them, almost as if he needed to show America, we are in charge, we have dominance, and in showing my dominance, I can show my dominance by humiliating this world leader who is leading a multitudes of other people somewhere else around the globe and still make him look like an asshole. That is how I'm showing that America is dominant and America is number one and we have primacy. That's what it seemed like he typically does. Adding to that, all of the world leaders from the standpoint of Europe, shuffling through one after the next, in which case he sends them in a penalty box as he browbeats Zelensky to try to get Zelensky to take a deal and, be more flexible, quote unquote, to take his term. And then allows the European leaders to come in and beg him for stuff, almost as if it's an imperial prerogative. That's not equal. That's something else. When you get Rudy, I believe they call him, calling him daddy, that's humiliating. One man calling another man daddy. Now, there's nothing wrong with that if that's your bedroom preference. I'm pointing out that unless Root is sleeping with Trump, then he shouldn't be calling Trump daddy. It's humiliating. You have all of these leaders who are radically and completely unequal to the president of the United States. And Trump uses his media apparatus to show how radically unequal they are. The US media is fundamentally not used to seeing two world leaders dealing with each other on equal terms, where one leader says, I have no F's to give. You've just lost in a war. And the other world leader on some level acknowledges that fact. And they sit down and try to make a deal. No, they don't trust each other. They don't. But so what? They're dealing with each other in these terms. That's not what you typically get. And because of unfamiliarity, the media in the United States is screaming, oh my God, Trump laid down. Trump laid down. How dare Trump just let Putin walk all over him in this particular fashion? He wasn't walked over. He had no cards. There's a difference in those things. There's a great difference in those things. I'm trying to point out that the reason that he got up and took that phone call wasn't because he just wanted to cut through the middle of all of this stuff. Cut through the middle of what? What were they talking about? Where Trump needed to be like, you know what? I need to call Putin right now. I need to have a conversation with him right now. What? What were they discussing? What did Trump agree with that the European leaders were begging him for in that moment where he needed to get up and have a conversation with Putin and say, hey, Putin, I just wanted to bring up to you what some of these other European leaders said. Do we really think that that's what took place? It did not. It did not. That's called contempt. That's called showing power. That's called showing that you don't matter. That's what that is. Those pictures indicate you don't matter. That is what Trump was trying to get across with every fiber of everything that took place in regards to this particular summit. In reality, Trump wanted to have a conversation with Zelensky because Donald Trump, in his mind, is trying to get some level of a deal. And he wants to get a deal without having to browbeat all of these people using American leverage to do it. These European leaders, not wanting that in full-blown delusion of what is taking place on the battlefield, come shuffling in, not getting the message. It's almost as if they believe, and I'll go with Berletic on this, the division of concerns or the division of labor, that they don't want that labor to be divided or divided up. They don't want daddy to leave, in which case we need to protect Zelensky and we need to keep this war going, because if this war stops with any kind of deal, daddy goes away. That's wild. It's just absolutely wild. I hear my guest, so I'm going to bring in my guest. She is a first-time guest here. I am greatly appreciative of her joining me, especially on short notice. How are you doing today? This morning? It's very early for you. That's the other thing. I feel so bad. It's very early for you. How are you doing this moment? And just to give the audience your name, Dr. I butchered your name, so don't forgive me if I mess this up. I'm going to ask you for it. Dr. Jemima Pierre.
Jemima,
Thank you. Dr. Jemima Pierre. Thank you for this. Thank you for joining me, okay? How are you doing this morning?
I'm okay. This is the first time I'm hearing my voice because it's so early, but it's it's good. I'm good, thank you.
It's
How
okay.
are you?
I'm doing fine. You should hear me sometimes in the morning. Oh, God, man. When I was in the States, and it's like 6 a.m. or 7 a.m., and the first words that come out is like this deep, very white. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. But you sound perfectly fine. You're fantastic. And just for the audience, Dr. Jemima Pierre.
Jemima.
Jemima, damn it. I
It's
will
a
get that
French
right.
pronunciation. It's Jemima, really. If you think about that, I'm Haitian American, so
Okay. Jemima. Okay. I'm going to try to get that right. Dr. Jemima Pierre. I will put a note in it until I have you on a few times where it
right,
sticks.
right, right.
Dr. Jemima Pierre, she's a distinguished faculty of arts professor of African American and African diaspora studies in the Institute of Race, Gender, Sexuality, and Social Justice, and faculty associate in the Department of Anthropology in the University of British Columbia, Vancouver. She is research associate at the Center for the Study of Race, Gender, and Class at the University of Johannesburg. Wow. You also write for Black Agenda Reporter. Do you still do editor at
I
the Black
do. I'm one
Agenda?
of the editors. Yes,
Okay.
I don't write as much as I should, but I am one of the major editors of the
Well, it
weekly.
sounds
I
like
work with Margaret Kimberly. Yes,
she is awesome.
yes.
Margaret Kimberly is awesome. That woman is fantastic. It sounds like you have a massive resume, though. So it sounds like you may not have a huge amount of time to write. It's like give yourself a break. I brought you on to have a conversation about Haiti. So
Oh,
recently, it has come out, and I saw this, I think, the other day, that the U.S. has indicted Jimmy Barbecue, and I'm going to mispronounce this last name, even though I'm going to go for it. Hope springs eternal. Cherizier?
Cherizier.
Cherizier. Okay. Jimmy Barbecue Cherizier. They've indicted him. Now, I remember you are familiar to me. And I think it may be because I read your article when your article first came out, because I was covering this story for the radio station. And, you know, when we had a guest on who was making this argument effectively, and by the way, thank you for the prep work for this. It helped greatly. Your article and the other article associated with it. And there was one more that I found that was associated with it. Thank you for that. One of my guests, Robert Patillo is half Haitian. And he was pointing out, he says, look, the mainstream media is getting this wrong. This is not a quote unquote gang war in the way that they're trying to say it's a gang war. Gang war kind of undermines what is taking place on the ground. What it is effectively something akin to a civil war, where you have various sides that are, in some respects, people who are representing people in protests, as opposed to just quote unquote gangs, which is what they're being marginalized down to. Let's start at the beginning, though. How did Haiti fall apart? And I guess I'm not sure where we should start on this. Maybe back during the Clinton era and move up from there. I mean, we have about 30 minutes. So I want to be able to, at the very least, hit the indictment and what's taking place. So I'm going to let you start where you want to start on this.
Okay, thank you. Well, first of all, there's no civil war in Haiti. So let's be clear. There's a small group of armed and a number of armed small armed groups. Up until 2 years ago, did not have that much power. In fact, Ecuador has major gang issues.
Yes, they do.
Jamaica was under state of emergency for the past 4 or 5 years. Turks and Caicos, we have the cartels in Mexico. This comes nothing close to what's happening. So let's be clear about that. So the sensationalism around Haiti is important to keep in mind, because it's a very long history. And for people who don't know, I'm going to start at the beginning, which is Haiti is the second oldest country in the Western Hemisphere. Haiti became independent in 1804, long while there was still colonialism and slavery throughout the Western Hemisphere. And Haiti's history is unique in that it is the first free nation in the Western Hemisphere. While the U.S. still had slavery, you had the enslaved Africans actually rise up against their owners, the colonial masters, defeated Napoleon's military, the most powerful at the moment, as well as defeat the Spanish and the British, who came to try and take over this land that was France's most lucrative colonial possession with the enslaved Africans. And so there's that history. And, you know, Frederick Douglass, African American scholar and also abolitionist from the 1800s, who the U.S. actually sent to Haiti as to take a piece of land from Haiti back in the 1800s, said that Haiti has never stopped paying for winning that revolution. So there's that. What's happening in Haiti now is something that's a long. So part of that is Haiti is one of the only countries out in the region that is not fully captured by the U.S. and Western imperialism. And alongside Haiti, you have is Nicaragua, Venezuela, and Cuba. All these others are neocolonial states. And Haiti has always fought. And so the U.S. has always had Haiti in its crosshairs. When Haiti became independent, the U.S. did not recognize Haiti for 60 years. And there was a blockade against the country by the European powers who still had slave plantations throughout the Americas. So there's that. In 1915, the U.S. the Marines occupied Haiti for 19 years on behalf of Citibank to take over the Haitian customs and so on and so forth. Dissolved parliament, removed every kind of government that the country had, and took the Haiti's gold, put it on ships, and sent it to New York. So we have that. And so the moment that we're in right now is what I call the second occupation. And it's really interesting, actually, because I watch all these alternative media, and I watch some of these key colonels, military officials who actually were part of the 2004 coup d'etat against Haiti under the George W. Bush administration.
Interesting.
In 2004, the US, France, and Canada removed Haiti's president. They went to his house. He was elected. He had the majority of the votes. They went to his house, loaded him onto a plane, and flew him to the Central African Republic. This is actually well documented, and I don't, democracy now has gone off the rails, but if you go to Democracy Now, they have the archive, because I remember waking up February 29th and having someone call and say, I've been kidnapped. The president got a phone snuck to him, and he called in, and Amy Goodman, and I forgot which U.S. senator, she's from California, Maxine Waters, called in and said they've kidnapped Haiti's president. This is in 2004. But before that, in 2003, in Ottawa, and people can look up this thing called the Ottawa Initiative, where in the winter 2003, the Liberal president of Canada, Jacques Chrétien, held a meeting in Lake Meech, in his resort area in Canada, where they brought in all these Europeans, Americans. They basically decided that they needed to get rid of Haiti's president. Right. He was his name was Jean-Bertrand Aristide. He had been brought into power in 1990. Groundswell. This is the first major revolution after the first revolution that you had, where after a dictatorship, the people brought him into power. This was a mass movement. Within 9 months, the CIA had removed him from power. He came back. And he was brought back by Clinton, which is a whole other conversation, in 1993, because they were afraid of so many migrants coming into Haiti. So Clinton wanted to do something. So they basically said you could come back if you go with the economic policies that the U.S. wanted, which were the neoliberal economic policies that opened up Haiti to fleecing. Right. And Clinton would later, by the way, apologize for destroying Haiti's rice industry. Right, for his Arkansas farmers, yeah. Right, and so in 2003 they meet and they decide they're going to get rid of this president. There was no Haitian present, so you have these Westerners, and Denis Paredes, who was the Canadian foreign minister at the time, later on would give an interview and said that meeting was about whether or not what did he say? He said that whether or not sovereignty whether sovereignty is something that is necessary for a country like Haiti. And he says this, and I will find the video, because he does say that.
So openly opines this. Hey, maybe these Black people don't get sovereignty.
Exactly. And so part of that is, the Haitian sovereignty has always been on the line, and Haitian people know this. And so you have in 2004, you have where the U.S. actually was not going to leave it to chance, because in 1990, when Aristide won, they had their puppet, a former World Bank person named Marc Bazin. They thought he was going to win. And there was a groundswell. People came in and they voted. And so they decided, and I always say Haiti's a laboratory, the same way I think Palestine is a laboratory for West Asia. I think they decided that they would not allow elections to chance again. And I think from then on, they decided to not allow free and fair elections, as they always say, right? But in 2004, in February 29, 2004, and I have to say that's exactly 200 years since Haiti declared independence, and I'm very sure this is not by accident, right? To remove him from power, and what they did was they basically dissolved parliament. There was a prime minister. If the president is incapacitated, the prime minister has to take over. They went. The U.S. Ambassador at the time went to the Haitian Supreme Court leader, basically. Put in another made him interim government, and then the sitting prime minister was basically sidelined. And then they brought in some guy who had been living in Boca Raton, Florida, for like 30 years, and made him the interim, whatever he was, prime minister. This actually reminds me of the Lebanon case, but that we can talk about that another time, right?
Yeah.
And so they dissolved everything and basically created this government. What's significant about Haiti's occupation, though, is that this coup d'etat, which was led by the time you had the removal of the Haiti's president, in that evening, and I write about this because I have like a timeline of the insertion of the beginning of the occupation. You already had hundreds of U.S., France, and Canadian soldiers on the ground in Haiti, and they took over. The U.S. had this special mission, but then 2 members of the UN Security Council were able to get the UN to send a so-called peacekeeping mission that basically hid this was a coup d'etat. So US and France, were able to write up the documents, which we found out, by the way, by Dominique Villepin, had already written this document on February 25th, that Haiti was about to be taken over, had already sent this to the Security Council. And we published this document on Black Agenda Report a few years ago when these UN archives, part of them were open, right? And so the UN comes in, right? So through the 2 members of the Security Council who caused the coup d'etat, were able to get the UN to basically take over Haiti in what they call Chapter 7 invasion. And Chapter 7 means Chapter 7 is only used when there's civil war. There was no civil war in Haiti. There were protests, right? There were anti-government protests. There were counter-protests, and so on.
I see.
But there was no civil war. But also that the U.S. had been funding these ragtag groups of people in the Dominican Republic. Guy Philippe, who was leading one of them, and the media. If you read the media, it's almost as if this ragtag group of a couple hundred people were about to take over, and Haiti. This president needs to leave right now. And he refused to resign, but then the narrative is that he resigned. So the UN comes in and takes over and has the longest occupation, one of the longest occupations in Haiti, because the UN comes in and basically hides the fact that this was a coup d'etat. And they created something called the Core Group. And the Core Group is a bunch of, they call themselves Friends of Haiti, that have basically controlled what happens with the occupation. What's interesting about this is also, it was Brazil under Lula who took over the military wing of the occupation. And so we were being occupied by Brazilian soldiers. And Lula spent almost $1 billion in Haiti because he thought Brazil would get a seat on the Security Council. So they thought, let's do all this stuff for, this is why I always talk about the leftism of the Americas crumble at the door of Haitian sovereignty, because you have the participation of Lula taking the lead in this. And so this is what we have. So under this occupation, you have, so then the U.S. can basically take off its occupation and put it on the UN, what I call the multilateral, multinational, multiracial occupation, because the UN soldiers are from all over the world, from African countries, from Asian countries. And then when the WikiLeaks papers were released, it shows that they said, oh, this is the perfect time because it's the cheapest way for the US to get its foreign policy objectives without having to put boots on the ground and having all these countries have buy-in in the occupation of Haiti. Now, the UN occupation of Haiti lasted from 2004 to 2017, in that the UN brought cholera to Haiti that killed 40,000 people because they were dumping feces in the main water in the central part of the country that sickened 1 million and killed 40,000. You also have major sex crimes that are still being prosecuted today. The UN never apologized, never paid restitution, and so on. But we still have the core group, which actually makes decisions. And what I have to say is Haiti's been under occupation since 2004. The UN has had a mandate in Haiti. The UN is involved in Haiti's rule since 2004, and they are still there. And so, for example, so before that, though, in 2010, and this is what really set up everything that we're seeing today, Haiti does not have a state. In 2004, when the U.S. invaded and removed our elected president, Haiti had 7,000 parliamentary members of Congress, and so on and so forth. Today, they have 0. And this happens under occupation. In 2010, under Obama, Hillary Clinton changed the election results. And this is in the WikiLeaks papers. This has been written about. If you look at Center for Economic Policy Research, and they demonstrate this. If you look at The Nation, they have a whole series of WikiLeaks and Haiti papers. Hillary Clinton, so they wanted to have elections. Their candidate did not make it, Michel Martelly, which is the who was a musician, and also a right-wing neo-Devaluerist. Devallier was our dictator for 36 years. And so Hillary Clinton flies to Haiti and threatened to put the sitting president on a plane out of Haiti if he doesn't agree to the changing of the first round went through. Martelly did not make the first round, and they wanted one guy to get off so that Martelly would make the second round. Mind you, in the meantime, Brian Berletic, who I like and always shows up on this show, always talks about the information. This is the U.S. superpower taking over the information, the National Endowment for Democracy, funding the so-called, opposition, and so on, right? And so what you have is funding Martelly. They funded his campaign. This man, they hired a PR firm who I've met some of the people in the PR firm to make him. So Hillary Clinton changed the election result and put this man in power. Mind you, only 18% of the population voted. The majority of the population were left out of the elections. And so so you have the installation of what they call the PHTK, bald-headed party, whatever, that has been in control through the U.S. And so fast forward, right? So 2004, you put Martelly in power, and then he has no mandate, but he's run under. And then you have Jovenel Moïse, who was brought in after him, and who under the Organization of American States also plays a role as doing U.S.'s dirty work. Under bad elections, there are protests all over, and there are protests in Haiti against Martelly, and because of corruption and so on and so forth, and also the IMF wanting Haiti to remove fuel subsidies for the people, which raised inflation by 40%. More than that, exactly, right? Yeah, and so you have all that, and then Jovenel Moïse is assassinated because the Haitian elite, they're fighting with each other, but he's assassinated by Colombians, right? And these Colombians are everywhere.
And nobody, correct me if I'm wrong, that is still unclear. The assumption was that the U.S. was involved. Effectively,
the U.S. was involved, and so much of the is now secret, right? So much of the proceedings, and what's fascinating is that some of this assassination trial is being done in the U.S., and we wonder where the U.S. get the jurisdiction. Part of it is because U.S. resident citizens were part of this, and the U.S. is hiding a lot of information because this FBI came into Haiti and took all the information and left, and so we don't know who's behind it, but people know that it was like the party. So you have the assassination, and you have continuous protests, and after the assassination, what happens is the prime minister, so-called prime, there were two prime ministers. One was just fired and the other one was about to come in, but he wasn't put in place yet. And so the core group, which still runs Haiti, basically decided with a tweet who would be Haiti's prime minister, which would be this guy named
The core group is associated with the United Nations.
United Nations, and it's a bunch of groups that include Brazil, the European Union, Germany, and that basically make decisions. They're very, they are integral in Haiti's political culture. And so my point is, if we get to this moment, it's through occupation. It's under foreign occupation that Haiti is where it is. And so and people have to remember that. So they installed this prime minister. And this is where you start having the discourse around gangs, because people were protesting over and over again. And then they would come in and say, well, it's just these gangs that are wreaking havoc in Haiti. And so what they did was basically dismiss these protests as if they're gangs doing that. And I sent you this thing because a group of grassroots organizations in Haiti, castigated the UN, and the
Yes.
UN is very much, we're under UN occupation. So let's be real, the UN is very much part of this collusion over Haitian sovereignty, denying Haitian sovereignty. Is they said Gutierrez, the UN is responsible for the gangsterization of Haiti. It's
Mhm.
not, so our protests are legitimate. But what's happened is over the years, and to be fair, there's always been armed groups in Haiti used by the elite. Haiti is run by an oligarchy of non-black people, by the way. So Bijou, who was Gilbert Bijou, who's like the richest person in the Caribbean. Also, I think he was the no, it's Bulos. It's either Bulos and Bijou. These 10 families, if you look them up. One of them was
Mhm.
like the Israeli consulate in Haiti. And so these are the elite. And so they've always used armed groups because Haiti's a poor country. You can always, they have all the guns. They own all the ports where the guns come through. They can always, so they've used these young people, for example, to go against their business adversaries. And that's always been the case. But under PHTK, the government, the party installed by Hillary Clinton, that's when you really have a rise of armed groups, goons by the government, to go against the popular movements, to go into these neighborhoods. And what's happened the past couple of years in the power vacuum is that these armed groups have actually become more independent than normal, even though they're not as independent as people think, because Haiti does not manufacture guns. All the guns come through the U.S. through these private ports or to the Dominican Republic, which is a country, we share two countries on one island. And so this is where we are. We are here because in 2004, the U.S., France, and Canada removed our elected president. And this is the most exceptional example of neo-colonial, neo-imperial sabotage, where you're able to remove presidents. And for the past 20 years, have installed prime ministers, presidents, and basically disbanded any kind of elected official that Haiti has. So there's
Yeah.
now
It's
the
for
worst
the
part of
state.
it, and I'm going to stop because I know I've been going for a while, but the worst part of it is last spring, the U.S. convinced CARICOM to basically say, we need to do something about Haiti. And Mia Motley, who's also vying for the Secretary General job of the UN, the Prime Minister of Barbados, they basically handpicked a group of Haitians and basically brought them to, with Blinken, and basically said, we're going to create a Haitian, a revolving presidency, a transitional presidential council of 9 people that they handpicked. And these people all had to agree to allow foreign invasion of the country in order to be part of the conversation. And Mia Motley
Oh
played a
yeah.
key role in forcing that. And then they went all the way to Kenya and brought in mercenaries
Yes.
to be in Haiti. So there's a group of 800 or so, 500 or so Kenyan mercenaries who are just chilling in Haiti. 3 of them got killed recently, but this is what's happening. So we are under complete occupation. And so for people to know that, the way the media presents Haiti as if there's always, violence is endemic. These people can't rule themselves. They killed their president and everything has been bad. The biggest gangsters in Haiti is the U.S. government, the United Nations, the Organization of American States, and the core group.
All right. We have about 6 minutes. That
I
is a
know.
fantastic rundown. No, do not apologize. You're perfectly fine. You gave a rundown of it in a way that it gives context. Context is needed because otherwise, if you just start with the story and say, okay, well, what about the indictment? You miss the other stuff of how you got to the point, which is why I say, how do we get here? How do we get to this particular point? On the radio show, we used to have somebody who would say, hands off Haiti, hands off Haiti. And you would get other people get into fights saying, well, the state seems to have collapsed. You need to do something. And your point is they have been doing something the entire way through, and everything that they've done has made it worse. Who is Jimmy Cherizier? I think that's the last name.
Jimmy Cherizier is one of the most prominent, I guess, armed group leaders. I don't call them gangs because I think it diminishes what's happening. And these guys, Jimmy Cherizier was a former police, and these are paramilitaries, I think. And so he's one of the more prominent so-called gang leaders that was able to actually unite smaller groups, and they control Port-au-Prince. And people have to remember, Haiti has 12 million people all over, right? So the Port-au-Prince is the capital city. There are people everywhere else. Haiti's predominantly agriculture, but anyway, so he's for me he's the boogeyman for the U.S. because there are other groups. There's this guy named Ezel who's actually much more notorious, and people are wondering where he's getting his money. They're like in fatigues and uniforms and bigger arms than what Cherizier has, and so he's the one. And I think this indictment is actually a farce in the sense that it's actually allowing this notion that, because I don't know if you've heard, Eric Prince signed some kind of deal. Eric Prince from Blackwater signed some kind of deal with the illegitimate. Whatever deal is signed with Haiti is illegitimate because there's no government. There's no government. But he signed a deal to go to Haiti, use drones, and kill people, and then sooner or later will be in charge of Haiti's tax revenue, right? So
That is outrageous.
Right. So
That's outrageous.
is one of the people that's been indicted, but indicted for receiving cash, small amounts of cash from the U.S., from his so-called supporters in the U.S. and so on. Now, if the U.S. really wanted to do something, it could actually enforce the arms embargo that is coming in. But you're allowing Eric Prince to ship thousands of weapons to Haiti. That you can stop the flow of weapons to Haiti. And what the U.S. is having a problem is they cannot have another United Nations. The UN is refusing because of Russia and China refusing to send another mission to Haiti. They want another cheap mission to Haiti to wreak havoc again. So Cherizier is, I think, the so-called fall guy, but he's given more international interviews than anybody. If anybody knows where to find Cherizier, that's what I'm saying. Like, to me, this is just a boogeyman that is being used for U.S. to make it seem like they're doing something in order to maybe give Eric Prince some kind of leverage so when he goes in there so he can make some money. But to me, that's not the issue. The issue is what the U.S. is doing in terms of importing guns, supporting the oligarchy, and also enabling more violence in the country.
Let's see. We have 2 minutes. This is a very broad question, and sometimes it's very hard to put things back together after they're broken, and that assumes that people even want to put them back together. I had a friend of mine, by the way, that went to Haiti. She lived there for 3 to 6 months, and the side of Haiti that she showed was not something that you necessarily see on media. Like, she was showing oceans, streams, mountains. She was showing all of this stuff, this landmass that's gorgeous. And it's like, yeah, you don't typically see that under normal circumstances. How does this get put back together? And again, this assumes that there's a concerted and honest want to even try to put it back together.
Right. Well, there is from the people. In early 2021, Jovenel Moïse, the president that was assassinated, tried to extend his mandate. It was over in February, and he refused. And so there are a group of Haitian communities. They came together. All the various groups came together, and they have like Haitian Solutions. And they're the ones that had like a 2-year plan, a transition plan to get back on track, to get elections, to get local elections, to have a national conversation. The U.S. completely poo-pooed all of that, just completely erased that, refused to acknowledge, and basically supported this prime minister, this rogue prime minister that they put in charge, that wreaked havoc on the country. So part of the way this gets put back together is for us to get rid of the UN and the U.S. occupation of Haiti right now. We need to get these foreigners out of the country. We need to get Eric Prince out of the country. And, I always say, Haiti won its independence at a time when it was most improbable, when slavery was entrenched in the world, in the Western Hemisphere, and they emerged independent and free and defeated the most powerful military in the time. That time is coming. I have full faith that we will come back. And that's where we are.
One last question. I'm sorry. I had access. Are the protests part of that? I mean, without agitation, nothing happens.
Without agitation, but what's happening, I think the armed groups have actually limited protests. They forced the people I think one of the things that the armed groups have done, they forced the people in retreat. And so especially in the capitals, there've been protests, but not as much as before. Right. And so one of the things I think, and that's why we think this is like a sinister thing. And people always like to blame internal politics and say, oh, these people are just corrupt anyways. I'm just like, who's more corrupt than Donald Trump? This is the U.S. Who's more corrupt than the U.S. government? But it's easy to say, oh, these Haitians are just corrupt and so on and so forth. But it is constant Western meddling. A small country, even though it's one of the most populous in the Caribbean, it's constant meddling. And so I think, we need to get rid of all these people. We need to get rid of U.S. imperialism. We need to get rid of these so we can take control of our own destiny. And I have faith that we will.
Dr. Pierre, thank you for this. Great breakdown, great explanation. Yeah, I deeply appreciate it. Dr. Jemima Pierre.
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, I got it. Dr. Jemima Pierre. The thing in my mind is like, is it Jemima? You kept saying Jemima.
It's
like, which one do you want to say?
It's not the pancakes. It's not the
Yeah,
pancakes.
it's like, say the opposite of the thing that you're built to say. All right, Dr. Jemima Pierre. She is Distinguished Faculty of Arts, Professor of African American and Diaspora.
African and African Diaspora Studies at the Social Justice Institute in the University of British Columbia.
Thank you. Also, I have you at, I have one more for you. I have Faculty Associate at the Department of Anthropology. At the University. Okay.
British Columbia.
Yeah. Okay.
I'm in two departments, yeah.
Oh, I see what's going on. She's also Research Associate at the Center for Study of Race, Gender, Class at the University of Johannesburg. And again, Black Agenda Report. Check her out. I know she says she doesn't write as often. You can look her up and find her other previous work. She has a really good breakdown of Haiti. Thank you for this.
Thanks so much for having me, Jamal. My pleasure.
You have a good one. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Right, take care. Bye-bye.
All right. That was a fantastic breakdown by Dr. Pierre. And I see my next guest waiting in the wings. I'm going to go to her now. I'd like to give her a little prep time before I go to her. There she is.
Hi.
So, how are you doing?
Good.
Welcome back. Sarah Bils, host of DD Geopolitics. Fantastic outlet. In fact, you guys were the first outlet where I saw the numbers.
Oh, yeah, we did. That was Barut. He did very well. Sorry I didn't answer your text. I was wondering if we could talk after the show because I was like, I can't type all of this.
You were perfectly fine.
I was like, well, Jamal, you send like a wall of text, and I'm like, I gotta take notes.
I'm very verbose. And
yeah.
And I get insecure in regards to what I'm thinking, or like, yes. Like meaning I need to, like, I have a tendency to, when I know people, I get good at knowing their cues. Like, okay, you went too far? Not far enough?
No, you never go too far. I'm just like,
no, I can't.
I'm not mentally equipped to handle to text this
you're
now.
perfectly fine. And the audience is probably thinking, what the hell are these two talking about? So I asked Sarah about a weekend show. Maybe on a Sunday, maybe on Saturday or something to that effect. Because I think it'd be great. It'd be like a weekend rundown. Both of us present our stories.
Well, I think so too. Yeah. Let's just discuss the details about how you want to do it.
Fair enough. I know they're gonna be like, what the hell are they talking about? But the numbers. So the numbers, which they are breathtaking. I used to say 1.3 million. Okay, I was way off by 500,000. Ukraine military losses expose 1.7 million dead or missing. Russian hackers have reportedly breached the Ukrainian General Staff's database, revealing catastrophic losses of the armed forces of Ukraine. According to the compromised digital registry, if the data is correct, what the hell? If the data is correct, Ukraine lost 1,710,000 troops killed or missing over 3 years of the conflict. And obviously, the numbers are just getting worse. 118,500 first year, 405,400 second year. I want to point out, too, if you remember, they were saying, well, the Russians lost over 100,000 this year, but Ukraine only lost 8,000 this year. And media publicized that nonsense as if, here are the stats for what is taking place in Ukraine. Ukraine lost more than that in the first year alone. I'm just pointing out, 595,000 third year, 621,000. The year is not even over with yet. That number could hit 1 million easy, especially if you have a collapse on the front. Whew. That's rough. Give me a take on that. I mean, we may as well start off on that since that's something that was put out. You guys did good work getting it out. You were one of the first sources.
It's funny because I usually do believe KillNet. We've spoken with them prior. I mean, we don't know them personally because they don't reveal their identities, but they're usually a decent source. It's funny because somebody asked me last week, numbers of casualties aren't something that I really think about or calculate, only because it's dark, and I don't want a bunch of Ukrainians to die. But they asked me, and I said, honestly, maybe up to 2 million. So I wasn't that far off. I really thought it was pretty high. Just from watching what's been going on. I'd be curious about the Russian numbers too. I really don't have an accurate count on those, but I think that 1.5, 1.7 probably sounds about right. We thought it was 1 million back in 2020, late 2023. Remember? We thought it was almost 1 million back then. So, and we've seen 2025. I mean, people haven't been watching as much because, and rightfully so, because of Gaza and other things taking their attention. Somebody messaged me last night and was like, well, there really haven't been that many Russian gains this year. I was like, what? They won't stop moving. Like every day it's more. There was a Russian, they ambushed the Russians, I think the other day near Pokrovsk, which is like they're celebrating as if it's their Stalingrad. But really, like, I tell them all the time, like, words are just wind and the soil doesn't lie. Like, whose blood is in the soil? There's Ukrainians everywhere. And did you see the video where they almost kidnapped a guy with his kids? They were in like a high-speed chase on the road.
I showed it this morning. And not just that, where they dragged the guy out the house. There was another guy where they dragged out the house with his wife and his dog trying to help him. I mean, this stuff is outrageous. And those people are going to die. Like, I saw somebody do the numbers. 90% of the people that they pull into the military
they die.
90%.
I mean, in Bakhmut, the life expectancy got down to minutes. Got down to under an hour.
Astonishing numbers. Those numbers are astonishing. Those are like Nazi numbers. Like when
they're like Nazi siege numbers. And when you look at the map, like Russia is just steadily forming these little pincers everywhere, like little ones. They make a little hole, and then they close it up. Another little hole, and then they close it up. And they're just doing this right down the line. And they're moving so fast. And I also think, well, it's the season to have a lot of momentum. They always have a lot of momentum August, September, and October before the rainy season starts. But right now, while all the kerfuffle's going on with the talks and everything going on with Gaza, no timing is better. When you watch the assets that they're also bombing, it's very interesting because they're bombing stuff that goes to Israel. They're bombing NATO weapons. They're bombing Azeri oil. Yep. It's very interesting what they're bombing. And also, which I don't think gets a lot of coverage, I tried to cover it a little bit last night, Ukraine and Ukrainians, even like partisans and civilians, they have like this campaign going on where they want to disrupt Russian energy. So they're doing everything they can to hit all of Russia's oil refineries. They hit another one last night, and I think that might be the fourth one. So there's still a lot of exchange going on between the two. I think Americans or maybe Westerners think things have maybe quieted down because they're like under the impression the peace talks went well, but they didn't really do anything. I think they gave Russia new life, actually. If anything, they had the biggest attack of the year, I think, last night. It was huge last night.
Yeah, and when the Europeans, apparently Russia hit them when the Europeans were there also, almost like just to F off.
Well, I'm actually surprised that the coalition of the willing is already kind of falling apart. Like nobody...
I never thought that they were going to put those.
You didn't think that the NATO countries would?
I thought that they fully understood that they would get killed immediately because it's a logic issue for me. It's a nose under the camel's tent. It's like they can say all they want. Oh, Putin is faking. Putin is joking. Putin is okay. They thought Putin was faking when he was saying, "Look, stop effing around with me. Stop effing around," and then he invades Ukraine. No, I think they understand that from the Russian point of view, this is a nose under the camel's tent. And if you allow 1,000 NATO troops in, you've effectively allowed 100,000.
That's the thing. Yeah, that's the thing.
So,
the hardest part is getting the first tranche in there. After that, you can just send soldiers as you want. So once you cross that line, and then this morning, while you were streaming, like right before I hopped on, Zelensky came out with a statement and said he'd be willing to agree to a frozen conflict. And it's like, we've done that twice. What are you even talking about? Like, are you guys just throwing the pasta at the wall at this point just to see what sticks? Like, nobody's going to go for a frozen conflict.
I think this is kind of, but the fact that he's even offering it indicates reality. Meaning Russia's not offering a frozen conflict. Russia's not asking for a ceasefire. Like that's very clear, right? It's those European buffoons that came in a parade of buffoons and degenerates that are begging Trump, please, daddy, do something. Why are they doing that? They're doing it because they know that the reality and the facts on the ground has created a certain context that is driving towards a certain degree of failure. Regardless of Zelensky and what he says, he knows it's true. And so, hey, let's have a ceasefire. Okay. Well, let's have a frozen conflict. Let's do this. Let's do that. With the hope, I suppose, of manipulating Donald Trump on some level, of maneuvering Trump into saying, see, those bad Russians don't want to freeze the conflict. No, dude. No, they're not. Why would they do that? That's a ceasefire. Why would they do that? Like, by definition, it's a ceasefire, just by different words. Like, Trump would never realize that a free frozen conflict is just a ceasefire. Okay, dude, he already told you no. He already told you no. Hell, he jumped on the phone with Putin in the middle of your conversation.
I know.
What do you make of that? I mean, I take it as just contempt. It does none of you matter.
Or it was a flex, like, well, then I'll just call him right now. And they're like, oh, you could just call Putin? You know, it was
from
like,
my understanding, Vance was like, the Europeans were like, oh, you can't do that.
Yeah.
You
And he was
shouldn't
like,
do
I just
that.
want to do it anyway. And he did it.
It's very possible that Putin knew Trump was going to call.
I'm sure that there was some sort of like, we might call you during this thing. And then he
Yeah.
used that as sort of a flex. Like, well, then I'll just call Putin.
Yeah.
We're friends now. We're friends now.
We're bros. So there is a argument that's taking place in independent media that has spanned the gap from, all of this is a nothing burger and theater, and none of this really matters. The war continues. Trump is lying through his teeth, into some of the other crowd that is, this is a change. Trump seems to be aiming towards something, whether he gets it or not. He seems to be aiming in that direction, with management of Europeans, with an agreement with the Russians in regards to, we're going to end this war. Where do you fall in that spectrum?
Of ending the war. I don't think the war will end. There's too much to do, and there's too far apart. They asked for the vacate of Kherson and Zaporozhye. That's never going to happen, especially with that power plant there. And Russians are not casualty averse. They're willing to die for their country, but once they do, they're very reverent about where they died. Yeah, and think about, they have songs called The Sacred War. They call it the Great Patriotic War. It's very intertwined into their being, and their attitude is wherever Russian blood has spilled, that's Russian land. And so they're not going to vacate anything that they fought for. This is silly. But, there's this whole weird, like, Zelensky he's the one not falling in line, blah, 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 but the ceasefire. The West doesn't want one either. Who are they kidding? Like, I really love this feigning of, like, I just want people to stop dying from President Trump. And it's like, no, you don't. You just gave Palantir, Anduril, OpenAI. They have full reign in Ukraine now. You just want the public sector out of Ukraine, so the private sector can take over.
Good point.
So he can hide the public sector, right? If he says, I've backed out, government money is no longer going. What he's actually done is put contracts in place, especially in the UK. You can see them. There's more documentation. And also with Germany now with Rheinmetall, these companies have been doing Elbit and Rheinmetall, two Zionist enterprises that supply Israel, are teamed up with Anduril and Palantir to give weapons to Ukraine. The Europeans are on the hook for these contracts. They're obligated to buy the weapons and then ship them over to Ukraine. That's why yesterday Robert Fico came out and said, not in my wildest dreams would I ever buy weapons from the United States and give to Ukraine. Like, why is the Slav, like the little lowly Slav in his little country in the corner of Europe, the one who has to talk sense? Like, are you serious? You want me to buy weapons with my money and then give them to Ukraine with the hopes that something pays me back in the future? Like, are you crazy? Like, what are we talking about here? And then I don't know if you saw my article, but even I did a deep dive into these contracts. These contracts are like Israel and Ukraine are becoming one. They're becoming one machine, one money laundering, one contractual machine. And it's just, the ball is rolling. The ball has been rolling.
It's worse than that. believe it or not. Or more humiliating is probably a better word to say it. Scott Benson. I don't know if you saw Scott Benson's comment on this. So he was on Fox News. Apparently, Trump is doing full court press. And he comes out and says, and what's wild about it, this is what I mean, contempt. They're saying it openly. It's one thing if I do something and I don't tell you, you may never know. Listen to this.
I think President Trump is very vigilant. Right now, we are selling arms to the Europeans who are then selling them on to the Ukrainians. And President Trump's taking a 10% markup on the arms. So maybe that 10% will cover the cost of the air cover.
No.
Or maybe it won't. Maybe he'll just take 10% on the top.
These people don't care.
Not only am I selling you weapons, and not only am I saying this openly,
I'm overcharging you.
I'm overcharging for you. I'm overcharging for it.
And I'm
What
keeping
the hell,
it.
right?
I'm keeping it. I'm not like doing anything philanthropic or using it to like rebuild our infrastructure or anything in the United States that has been destroyed. I'm keeping it.
How do you admit that?
Dude, I don't even remember the story that came out the other day, but I was arguing, I think, with a MAGA leaning person, and they were like, "Well, why? I mean, this can't be true. Why would they say this?" I was like, "Leaning, like, yeah." They were like leaning to the right, not totally psychotic.
Okay.
And they were like, "Well, why would they say this?" I'm like, "They tell us everything now. All you have to do is listen to them." They took the notes from the Israelis. The Israelis have been saying for 2 years, we're going to annihilate them. And they've been annihilating them. And now the Americans are just telling you straight up what they're doing. They don't care.
When you don't care. Yeah. When you don't care. It's like, I keep saying a buffoon of, a parade of buffoons. Not you, Maloney. You're different.
Queen Maloney, I love her.
But at the point where you're that subservient and you're like that beseeching, and then Trump decides to make a photo out of all of it so he can publicize it to the world. Look at these European leaders, these leaders of men who are here begging me for all of this stuff. Why should you care? Like what of that do you care when you can create that level of subservience? Even Zelensky wore a suit and was muted. He was just... It's like they talk to him like, look, I need you to shut the hell up. Just calm down. Don't say anything. Don't piss daddy off. Just leave him to his devices.
Even Vance said, well, if you behave, then maybe I'll be able to save you this time. What the hell is wrong with these people? Not for nothing. I hate Zelensky. But the man has lost half of his country. 2 million people. Yes, most of it's his fault, but some of it's not. And like, they just treat him like shit. It's so like, I don't revel in that. I think it's ugly.
Okay,
Zelensky did everything that was asked of him, except for wearing a suit. But he did everything that was asked of him in terms of this war. You know, he put his people in between the West and Russia, like he was asked, and he was promised a slew of things, and he's not getting any of those things because the West thought they were going to win this war, or they were going to be able to subdue Russia. So he's not really in a fair spot either. If you really try to sympathize with the guy's horrible person. But the way that they are going about this is very disquieting, because it's like, we have supported you in the loss of 1.5 million of your people, and now we're making fun of you in the White House. It makes me very uncomfortable. I don't like it.
I am pro miserable people having a rough life.
Yeah, but I hate MAGA more than I hate Zelensky. Isn't that crazy?
I hate all of them.
I do too.
I mean, if I tell you, I say, Sarah, I'm going to give you a car. I'm going to give you $20 million. I just need you to go and murder 20 people.
I might do it for 20 million.
If you attempt to do that, you're a horrible person. And by the way, that's just 20 people. 1.7 million people are dead as a result of Zelensky.
But I don't think it was so much as I'm going to give you. It was, we are going to bring Ukraine into the EU. We are going to bring Ukraine into NATO. I mean, look at Pashinyan. Pashinyan's a terrible leader and an idiot, but he's also under the spell that, if we can get into the EU and NATO, it's smooth sailing from there. It's like they don't really watch what's going on. Those things were dangled in front of Ukraine like carrots. Plus, he has
And you,
Kolomoisky up his ass. Well, he doesn't anymore, but he did for those formative years. And he's a crazy, crazy psychotic Zionist. So, like, he's
and
already
you
got
don't,
the.
and you don't believe that Zelensky has a suitcase full of money.
Oh,
And
he's
all
got
of
a
this.
go bag. Yeah, he's got a go bag. Yeah, of course.
So he did get personal gains out of all of the money that's being
Sure.
done
They all
on,
did, yeah.
on Ukraine. Exactly. That's my point. Like, it's not this, we're just patriots. We've got 1.7 million people killed just because we love Ukraine so much. It's not that. And even now, where Zelensky is in this position of he has no future and he doesn't end the war. Meaning, it's not like Zelensky's like, and to make it even worse, Zelensky gets elected on a peace ticket and then flips and internalizes this idea of I am the fighter of the Russians. Look at my wall with 2 pictures of Moscow burning. Okay, dude, you play the piano with your penis. Let's be honest, right?
Did you know that when he played the piano with his penis, he was playing Jewish songs? He played the Hava Nagila. I did not know that until I did the
Did he?
research for my paper.
Interesting.
I thought it was
There's only-
interesting too. I was like,
Why is he playing? Well, right, he's half Jewish, but
no, he's
Of
fully
everything.
Jewish. He's not half. He's full
I thought he was
Jewish.
half Jewish. I thought his mom or dad or something was Jewish.
They live in Israel.
At the end of this war, he better take that money and make a beeline to France.
He's going to
They are
Israel.
going to string his ass up. Oh, they tolerate his ass. He is tolerated. There's a difference.
Yeah, oh, he's tolerated right now by the far right. Yeah.
Yeah, he's tolerated. Wow. Can we talk about well, one thing before I let you go with this one. Minsk 3. Is this Minsk 3?
I thought it was Budapest. We're going to do a Budapest memorandum again. I don't know. I don't think that there will be no Minsk. Maybe they'll go to Minsk, but there will be no Minsk agreement. I mean, all you have to do is replay the reel from 1 and 2 where they're just laughing.
No, that's not what I mean, sir. What I mean, that's not what I mean.
What do you mean?
Is it in the spirit of Minsk 2?
Yes, they really think like, oh, we could just do this again. We'll just do it again. And it's like we have this amnesia in the United States because we live on a 4 or 8 year cycle. I don't know that people can even get themselves in the mindset that Putin and Lavrov have been in office for 25 years.
Yeah.
I mean, what did Putin say? He said, you change every 4 years. Why would I ever make a deal with you?
Yep. Yep. And Lavrov commented recently at an interview, he pointed out if Ukraine continues down this road, or I'll just read it. If the Zelensky regime now rejects all of the characteristics, already talks about nuclear weapons, about joining NATO, about abandoning neutrality, then probably through very grounds that were the basis for recognizing Ukraine as an independent state will disappear. You will disappear as an independent entity. Don't F with us. I agree with you on this. Thankfully, I agree with you on this. I know the audience is like, you guys always fight like cats and dogs.
Yeah,
No,
but
I
that's
agree
what
with you on
makes
this.
it great.
Yes, but on this I agree. I don't believe for a moment. As I keep telling people, some people are very cynical. They was like, oh, this is just Minsk 3. Minsk 3 requires agreement.
Yeah.
They're not going to get agreement from the Russians on this.
You're not going to get an agreement from the Russian army either. Even if Putin sat down and signed the paperwork, which would never happen, but even if Putin sat down and signed, the army is not near Moscow. They already said, we'll just keep going. We're not going to stop until we're satisfied. And whether that means Kharkov or Kherson, there's also there's a lot of undercurrents going on here that even I didn't know about. There's a lot of undercurrents going on here. With once the Azeri oil started being blown up, I wrote an article this week. It's one of my magnum opus, or I guess opi. But it's about the Israeli-Ukraine connection. Yes. I was getting tired of people talking about this weird Russia-Israel alliance, and I was like, I'm not really seeing anything materially like they keep talking about it in like an emotional sense, right? There's Russians there, blah, blah, blah. They're not really Russians, they're Soviets, whatever. We don't need to go down that road. But I'm like, I'm not really seeing this materially. I'm actually seeing more so the opposite, especially with the linkage between Azerbaijan and Ukraine. So I started looking into this connection. It's very deep. The Israel-Ukraine connection.
Yeah.
What happened was is someone sent me a rumor. This is what these girls do to me. They'll send me rumors, and then they'll say, did you hear about this? And they'll do it in hopes that I write an article about it. So what it was is they sent me this post that's out of nowhere, and it was this woman, and she said, I've heard a really wild theory that the reason why they want to freeze the conflict in Ukraine is so they can use those foreign mercenaries and all of the Ukrainian, like the well-trained ones, not the conscripts, but they could use the elite forces to augment and supplement the IDF. They need and then all the news came out this week about the IDF being very short, blah, 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 blah. I didn't find any evidence of that, but that encouraged me to jump down this rabbit hole because I was like, how would that even be a possibility? Like, why would that happen? They're very connected, more than I even knew. Like, even I was like, whoa, like they have an exchange program. They have visa-free programs between the two. They encourage cross-training, cross-pollination of fighters. They're sharing weapons. They're sharing tech. They're sharing intel. They're sharing missile systems. They're sharing everything, these two. I didn't know, but some of the lands that Russia has actually taken, they are literally Jewish strongholds, not just any Jews either. Chabad Jews. Now, Chabad Jews are the political, most like maniacal Zionist Jews. That's who's holding on to Kherson and Dnipropetrovsk. And so, you know, I also didn't know, and I discovered it through researching this. I honestly didn't know this. Do you remember when Israel was saying that, you know, we don't really want to send the Patriots? They were kind of hemming and hawing and all, and they made it seem like we don't want to hurt Putin's feelings or really get involved with this. That is not why they didn't send them. They didn't send them because there's a Jewish pilgrimage site inside of Ukraine called Uman. It's where Rabbi Schneerson, you know, Rabbi Schneerson, the one that Candace Owens loves to talk about so much, Rabbi Schneerson was born there, and it became a pilgrimage site for Jews. Well, they had stopped the pilgrimages because they said, you know, the war is too much, blah, 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 blah. And we don't want to take an influx of all of these people because 50,000 people come and they're like, we can't afford this. Well, Benjamin Netanyahu was like, I'll give you the Patriots if you open up the pilgrimage. And that's why he gave them the Patriots. They allowed them to go back to Uman. I had no idea about this. None.
Interesting. I did notice the axis that was taking place between Azerbaijan, Israel, and Ukraine. I mean, it seemed to be formulated. Like it just seemed to be.
That's my next project, is that unholy trinity, because there is something going on there. And if you watch, and I hate conspiracy theory, so please forgive me, but if you watch, and I put it in the paper as well, the map of Greater Israel, and they do have a concept called New Hazaria. Now, this is separate from the weird anti-Semitic Hazaria myth. This is completely different. And if you watch, if those two things start to expand and come together, where they meet in the very middle is Azerbaijan and Armenia, right there in the Caucasus. So if they can get Azerbaijan on their side and they can defang Armenia, which they've done with Trump's corridor project, and Iran is being isolated, for all intents and purposes, Israel and Ukraine border one another.
Do you think there's secret protocols in the deal between Armenia and Azerbaijan? This idea of, hey, if you allow this, because I know Azerbaijan, Istanbul hate your guts. If you allow this, maybe you'll get into NATO someday. We'll have military exercises. Those big bad Russians that didn't come to your assistance, we'd come to your assistance. Now, I would hope Armenia is smart enough to know
they're
that
not.
the West
Pashinyan is not smart enough. That's what I didn't think so either. I was like, what's up with this guy? And he's literally just a buffoon. He has a journalism degree. Could you imagine our journalism degrees holding presidential offices? He's got an American journalism degree. He has no idea what's going on.
You could learn, but he doesn't seem to have.
I don't think he wants to. He's almost like an ignorance is bliss type person.
I've heard that the Russians may not believe that any of this can come to pass. That the
corridor?
The corridor. That they're like.
Maybe an explanation for as to why they really haven't reacted to it. That's how Russians are.
They don't reacted to it.
How so?
I mean, the blowing up of the oil fields are going after that.
That was happening before. That was happening before too.
From my understanding, the so-called oil field was off limits.
No, they bombed it in June.
Yeah, but how long have they been trying to? I guess how long have they been at odds with Azerbaijan, where it's kind of inflamed
Since the
to the level
terrorist
of
attack with the box
Yeah.
trucks, Azerbaijan was involved in that.
right?
And they know Azerbaijan was involved in the ambush that commenced the 12-day war. Azerbaijan
Mhm.
was very involved in that. Plus, you had the downing of the jet. Russia and Azerbaijan haven't been on very good terms for a while. After their jet went down, which is still very suspicious, they've used that as a cudgel on Russia, very much so.
Well, Russia's been using Ukraine as a cudgel to go after them also without doing so directly. And they'd be like, hey, we don't want to upset our relations with Azerbaijan, our friends, even though they've done some unfriendly things to us. It's the way they talk diplomatically while simultaneously blowing up oil fields, blowing up buildings, going after some of the Azeris that are in Russia itself. No, it's fascinating the way this is breaking down. I would say Azerbaijan better be careful. I mean, now, Iran is already saying, we will go, we don't need Russia. We will go if you F with us. And up to this point, the Russians they've been very slow to respond. I mean, the corridor is a big deal. I don't know. I agree with you. I don't know why
That corridor matters to a lot of superpowers as well. Now, realize that Armenia is a very staunch ally of India, surprisingly, and China also supports Armenia. China came out recently backing India, saying, we support India's sovereignty. They're allowed to do what they want in regards to the oil. India is in Russia right now talking about what was the quote Jai Shankar said? This is a multipolar system of relations that we are building with an increasing role played by the SCO, BRICS, and the G20.
Yes.
So they're forging ahead, and India intends to continue to buy Russian oil. This could really catalyze into a type of world. I think we already are in World War III, but for the lay people, it will look more like World War III. I do think some sort of conflict will break out in the Caucasus, but that place has been waiting for a conflict for a very long time.
I guess it depends on how long it takes a reaction. Like if Russia waits,
did you see the cargo planes? Russia's been sending cargo planes to Iran almost daily for a week now.
Saw. And I'm glad you mentioned that. So one of the guys was making the point. Okay, two things. One, Channel 14 is where they were talking about the weaknesses in the Israeli military, and they point out this was a bluff. Netanyahu was saying they were calling up 200,000 people. This was nonsense. He's very passionate about murdering Palestinians, apparently, but put that to the side.
לא היינו מצעירים על כיבוש העיר עזה, היינו מצעירים על כיבוש כל רצועת עזה, ואז אולי היית מקבל את כל החטופים. למה הלכנו על מהלך של שליש מהעבודה? למה? איפה ההיגיון פה? אם אנחנו באמת חמאס בלחץ אטומי, כמו שטוען נתניהו, אני אגב מסכים איתו שהוא בלחץ אטומי, כי לקחת לו עכשיו את העיר עזה זאת מכה קשה. אז למה אנחנו מכפילים את המכה הזאת פי 3? למה לא לבוא עכשיו בצורה מקבילה? על 3 המחנות. למה? זו טעות שלנו.
אולי אין לנו מספיק כוח.
יש לנו הכל, עזוב אותך. יש כל.
ראיתי שמגייסים יהודים בחוץ לארץ, כן מספיק.
לא מגייסים אף אחד, הנה גם אמרו 250,000, בסוף מתברר רק 60,000.
They claimed 250,000. That's a lot of what the chop. They claimed 250,000. They were only able to get 60,000. It was all a big bluff. I have never seen somebody that passionate about murdering human beings. And people say, I talk fast.
Well, you haven't watched enough Israeli TV then, because there's so many like that. I mean, yesterday we were on the radio, ordered Strouk, she's a maniac, but she's the Israeli minister of settlements, because she is like, let's put a settlement on everything. But yesterday the guy was like, well, what if they voted to do the Gaza, or what if they voted to continue the war? Because she was like, I want to continue the war. And he was like, what if the vote was you continue the war, and the hostages will probably die, or we'd continue the way we are and do a ceasefire and get the hostages back? She said, I would vote to continue the war even if the hostages die, and I'm not the only one.
Of course. Yeah, that's assumed. I assume that.
They walked out of the talks yesterday. Witkoff walked out, and then I don't know who he's frustrated with. I'm thinking it's the Israelis, because the Israelis literally said, we're not even going to respond. We are going to start the assault on Gaza tonight. And instead of responding to the ceasefire and Hamas's, you're fine. Hamas's agreement, They literally said, we're officially ignoring it. We will not respond to that.
What do they think?
They're wasting everybody's time. And Witkoff walked out of the meeting and withdrew from the talks.
What do they think the Hannibal Directive is? Like, do they think Israel is joking about that? Like, whether it's we're firing tanks.
I don't know what these Americans think.
It's weird. It's like they show
do they not know they're dealing with like a maniacal rogue state that will kill its own people and us if it has to?
They showed that guy starving to death.
Well, did you see? And I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but they burned a red heifer this last week, which is part of their sort of end of times prophecy. And I'm like, what are you guys doing? Like, I don't believe in this stuff. I'm not woo-woo and all of that, but
they do, though.
They do. They do. And they'll try to facilitate the end of the world. And I was like, well, what happens now if you burn the red heifer? They're like, we build the third temple and destroy Al-Aqsa Mosque.
They were breeding those effing things.
They're burning them now. And they're like, certain people have these ashes and they're walking around with the ashes. They're giving the ashes to influencers. To Jewish influencers, so they can go around and talk about it on podcasts. Whether it's a bluff or not, I don't think we should treat it as such, because they do say that next they will destroy Al-Aqsa and build the third temple.
No, what I mean is, I don't think that. No, just to be clear, religious maniacs are religious maniacs. Mm-hmm. I don't think they're bluffing. I think you have true believers in some of these people who they were literally breeding red heifers in Texas, and it's like, dude. What the hell are you doing? It's like, even a miracle needs a hand.
and exactly that. So I was talking to like a Christian who's very well versed in this stuff, and he's like, well, you know, they have to do it the right. Like, you could hear the fear in his voice, like, because he's a true believer, not in of their stuff, but that like the end of times doctrine. And he could hear him. He was like, okay, but they didn't use the right kind of cow. And then the Jewish person was like, yes, they did. And he's like, they didn't use the right kind of priest either. And the Jew was like, yes, they did. And the Christian was like freaking out because he's like, the end times are coming. Like, this is bad news bears, because we've got maniacal.
I mean, he's a Christian. He's supposed to be taken up with Jesus.
I don't know. Dude, I don't know these. I just know what I believe as a Catholic, and that's enough for me. I don't worry about these crazy end of times things. You're not supposed to facilitate the end of times. You're not supposed to try to guide the hand of God. But I guess the Israelis think that they can. I don't know. My thing is that even if the woo-woo stuff doesn't happen and there's no magic and the God and all that stuff doesn't happen, they're still going to destroy Al-Aqsa Mosque with their hands. They've been putting bombs underneath it for like forever. So what happens if they destroy Al-Aqsa Mosque?
I would be more amenable to the point of view as opposed to this kind of mystical God coming back over something like that. And I don't even believe this, so I'm just saying. If it's a UFO, like a UFO comes down and they look up and be like, oh my God. And it's just, you know, it's like the world has reconciled itself with that, whatever that means. Because I'm saying, if it's the end of the world stuff that these guys are coming up with, and they're trying to make this argument of this mystical argument where we destroy this, we get the red heifer, we build the temple, the world comes to nuclear war or something. I guess something has to happen for it to come to nuclear war. God comes back and he disappears 2% of the population of the planet, because I don't know how much of the population of Christians in real terms. And the rest of you just die screaming on a hellhole with Satan roving the earth. Is that really what they want? Like, that's the part that blows my mind. It's like the people who are pushing this stuff is like, what are you actually pushing? What are you actually saying? The number of people who they are effectively willing to cast off under their religious belief is astonishing. It's astonishing, but they believe it.
Oh, I have some breaking good news. So last night, the Russians hit Zakarpattia, which is very far west. They don't usually hit it. And I was kind of wondering what was going on. So that's
the Zelensky says coffee factory, right? He said
no. It was a missile. It was a factory called Flextronics, which is owned by a U.S. company. So now that's interesting. I'll have to.
That's the coffee making company. Zelensky said that Putin knew that he got his coffee from there, and he blew that place up. There is no
Flextronic?
way that place. Yes, I can show you the smoldering wreckage. There is no way that place was just doing coffee.
Yeah, Flextronics looks like it's they're affiliated with Brazil, and their electronic manufacturing services for aerospace defense. Yep, it's
There
more
it is.
military stuff. Yep.
There it is.
For Russia.
Zelensky's like, yeah, man, I was he blew up my coffee making place.
Oh, shut
It's
up.
like,
What are you
okay,
trying
dude.
to get sentimental? I'll blow up your Dunkin' Donuts. Like, get out of here. That's my coffee place. Change your sweatshirt. How about that? Worry about
Well,
coffee.
he went. To be fair, he went in a suit.
Oh,
He
yeah,
went in
that's
a
right.
suit.
He looked like Johnny Cash's like puppet. He looked like a marionette of Johnny Cash. It looked so ridiculous. It was so funny.
Can I hit you with one more thing for Lebanon?
Yeah, go ahead.
You guys put this video up. I sat here and I was like, "There's no way. There's no way." I was supposed to hit this one late this morning, but you are here, and this what time is? Okay, this can be the last thing. So this is Lebanon's, I believe, prime minister. I believe. Let me find it, because there's a difference between the two.
They have a
obviously,
president and a
between-
prime minister. Yes, yeah.
Right, but one is has credibility. The other one is a Western puppet. And
He's the Western puppet. He's from the ICC. He stepped
Okay.
down from the ICC. Well, they both are now. Joseph Ayoun is now kind of a little bit of a puppet, but he's more so.
yeah, and let a Zionist take over his role at the ICC.
Yep. That was the point, right? We'll make you president. You got to step down so we can put this maniac Zionist in charge of the ICC.
Yeah, but what's the point of being president if you have no power? That's the whole, like, it's one thing if I'm president and have power, have control. He is about to, I don't even think it's going to be a civil war. It's more likely that Hezbollah takes over as opposed to a civil war. I could be wrong on this, but everybody that I talk to that's from Lebanon is like, there's no way. There's no way. The people are not necessarily going to back this nonsense that this guy's effectively putting out. Half of the military would effectively leave. I mean, maybe the point is chaos, but this is delusional. I just want to point out to the audience, this is completely delusional. Can everybody see it? Okay, good.
لا أول مرة أقول لك إذا إسرائيل ما التزمت بما هو مطلوب منا.
Okay, you will take my word for it. He's effectively making the argument that Lebanon Prime Minister of Israel violations if Hezbollah hands over its weapons. He says for the first time, if Israel does not comply, there will be consequences, which is condemnation by the UN Security Council. So just to be clear, the Lebanon that has been attacked continuously through a ceasefire is saying, we've only been attacked because Hezbollah has their weapons. And if Hezbollah gives up their weapons, Israel will leave us to our devices. And if they don't, the UN Security Council, which a member is the United States, will totally get involved and rap them on the knuckles. He's saying that with a straight face.
Yep. These people are so brainwashed, liberalized, that they're like, our liberal institutions still work. They still do things.
You really think he believes that?
Well, I mean, he used to work for the ICC, so he has some amount of buy-in at least. Whether it's real or not, he has some amount of buy-in.
Sarah, the United States was at the ICJ court and made the argument that Israel has the right to starve 2 million people. The US, when it finally was shamed into passing a UN Security Council resolution under Joe Biden, came out and said, this resolution is not binding. So we need to pay no attention to this resolution. That guy, honestly, like, I can't believe he believes that. Am I just that simple?
That's the thing, though, and I encounter these often where, like, sorry, my dog is being awful this morning. Where, like, I'll meet Beltway people. I call them Beltway bandits or Beltway bimbos, or the people that kind of the DeVos people, and I'm like, you don't really believe this, do you? And some of them I don't think they do, but they're just there to hold the line, and they'll say the most crazy things, like crazy things. So these liberalized, sort of institutionalized people, I don't know if they even care to believe the stuff they say. They just say the things they're supposed to say. You have to remember, not everybody can critically think like you and I. Like, not everybody like sits around and like actually thinks about stuff. I think you're being too lenient with people. Like most people are not smart.
But how? I just
What do you mean
don't. How on earth? This guy, okay. He has seen Lebanon for the course of the last, I don't know how many years.
Mhm.
He has seen Israel bomb repeatedly. He is watching a genocide take place literally in Gaza, with the United States making every argument in the world, acting as if, no, those babies just have cerebral palsy. That's all. There's nobody starving. He's seen this with his own eyes. I can't believe that he believes what's coming out of his mouth right now. I just can't. There's nothing in me that believes that he believes what's coming out of his mouth. You might be right. That's breathtaking if that's true. That's breathtaking. Oh, that's breathtaking.
Have you ever met our Beltway lobbyists? They're the same way.
No,
All these people
I don't
that go
think
to
so.
school in Georgetown, Columbia, Pashinyan went to Columbia. All these people are just, they find these useful idiots and they pluck them out and they give them free educations, and then they're sort of brainwashed or they're drones. I mean, there's a huge divide in Lebanon. I don't want to get down around the rabbit hole. I know we're ending, but there's a huge divide in Lebanon, and people say it's north and south, but it's more so a people versus the state in a way. Like these higher up state officials have never really been in tune with the people of Lebanon. So,
Yeah.
and as
What's
far as
weird?
civil war, the vibes that I'm getting are that the people themselves even the army doesn't want Hezbollah disarmed. It's just the politicians. So there's a big schism there. Even the people that are against Hezbollah for all intents and purposes don't want them disarmed because they're afraid of Israel, and rightfully so. I mean, just look next door to Syria.
Yeah, and they better be afraid of Syria. It's Wahhabis.
Okay, that's next.
At any
Yeah,
point.
they're on the
Yeah.
border. They're on the border waiting to come into Lebanon.
Yeah.
They've artillery staged on the border of Lebanon. It's insane.
Yeah, it's just amazing. Like everybody that I've talked to has made the point of saying we don't believe for a moment that the government is going to have the power to do what the government is trying to do, even if they pass it into law. We don't believe that that's going to take place. That the population and they said they would occupy governmental institutions before it ever gets to that point, before they are allowed to have throw Lebanon into that much turmoil. So from their mouth to God's ears, I hope they're right, because Jesus, it's just chaos. And that guy needs to be out of power. I can't believe he was able to get in power. Can't believe it. Not saying so stupid shit like that. Okay, Sarah, you're fantastic. I always enjoy talking to you. Is there anything that you want to hit before we go? I want to make
Guys,
sure.
go read the article. I know it looks kind of like corny, like activism. It's not. It's not about like resistance or anything like that. People were like, "Oh, this is like," they thought it was like Gaza, Donbass, like fighting together. No, this is about the connectivity between Israel and Ukraine. Please read it. I promise you, everybody that has read it has come to me and said, "Holy crap!" And everything's sourced. There are links throughout. I don't want to hear it, but it's really a wild ride. I didn't know they were this close, and they're
working together. Is that what they said?
Yeah, that's what they said to me. They were like, "This is so corny." I was like, "That's not what it's about. Like, why would I do that?" But yes, contracts, weapons, intelligence, fighters, everything. They're sharing everything.
Oh, I see what you mean. Okay, because you're talking about Gaza, and they think you might be on a. Okay.
Yeah, they thought it was like an activism. I'm like, I'm not gonna write a 9-page thing about activism. Get out of here.
You would be feeling yourself. You would be really feeling yourself. It's like, God damn it, I'm in my zone.
Yeah, right.
I'm gonna save the world. Yeah, there was this woman. I was talking to KJ Noe yesterday, and KJ pointed out, what did he say? When a woman, it's so epic. He said, when a woman tells the truth, the world cracks in half. I was like, whoa, she's feeling herself when she wrote that.
I don't know who wrote that, but geez.
That's intense, right?
Yeah, well, it's like Mao's women hold up half the sky.
Yeah, but that's 50%.
Yeah, well, that's pretty, I mean, that's actually like, that's kind of hit me a little bit. because I get so
Really?
much. I get more shit than any man that says the same things I do. So it's like very interesting.
I feel I get more shit than newsmen.
You do,
but it's a hell of a quote. It's a hell of a
I
quote.
love that. I might make that my email signature. I love that. Thank you very much. You've made my day.
It's very epic,
Mhm.
but it's like you think, what's the headspace of the person who's writing that?
I'm gonna research it first because knowing
so
me, I'll
epic.
post it and they'll be like, "This woman was having a nervous breakdown." when she wrote that." I'm like, perfect.
That is so goddamn epic. When a woman takes the truth, the world falls. And she's like, yeah, that's what I want to get across. These fucking men. Sarah, editor, creator, DD Geopolitics. You guys have a show also though. You guys do a lot of Twitter spaces.
And we're gonna start doing a midweek show with Chris Halali when he's back from traveling. So he's in Greece right now. But yeah.
Oh, that should be interesting. He's like, these fucking Israelis, they're trying to take over.
Yeah.
Oh, did he? He said that?
Yeah. And they're all over Cyprus and Greece. It's a mess. It's a mess.
The new Gaza. Sarah, thank you for this. You be safe, okay?
You too.
And if you give me...
I'll just stay after. Yep.
Or I can hold you in the penalty box.
Yep.
I only have like 2 checks, so it's only gonna be a minute.
Okay, guys. Love you. Have a good weekend, and I will see you here on Thursday.
Next week, yes. All right. Talk to you in a few. All right, guys. We have come to the end. Yes, that quote has stayed in my mind for some reason. I don't know why. It's so epic. Yeah, it's so fucking epic. I love epic stuff. I just love the way language is. I just love the way language is written. It's just, you think to yourself, what is in that person's mind when they wrote that? And then you can have somebody else who's like, hey, that's a little much, right? Let's go to the chat. So Pink Rose, it's crazy to see all this stuff, all the struggles are interconnected. Yes, they are, right? I mean, what Haiti went through is a nightmare. And, one of the things, in fact, just to show the article that Jemima, Professor or Dr. Jemima Pierre, just to show the article she wrote through. Yes, I'm going to have to do that for a little bit just to get my mind right on that and make sure I get her name right. Right here. This was the article she wrote for Black Agenda Report. Check it out. It's detailed, which is why I didn't interrupt her when she was going, because there's a lot of backstory. And as I spent my time like going through this article, I was like, whoa, just whoa. It's so much that has taken place over the years and so many intricate things that most people are just completely unaware of. It's just like literally faded into the background in a way that we're just completely oblivious to. It's wild. And you think to yourself, God, man, this is so sinister. It's one action after the next in order to destabilize and fundamentally destroy a state. And whether that's with military, whether that's with destruction of the state in and of itself, whether that's destruction of the agriculture of that particular state, it's systematic destruction as if the individuals of that state are dispensable and disposable. It is wild. And all of that stuff is done under the guise of, we're trying to help them. That's what we're trying to do. See, we're getting these black folks from Kenya in order to come in order to militarize them because, they're black and these people are black. And so, it's black on black. And we won't be blamed for these kind of butterscotch babies that are being created from all of the rapes that were taking place by the previous Europeans. It's disgusting. It's disgusting. It really is. And again, Democratic and Republican administrations, bilateral. One of the interesting things in the article is she asks, why Haiti? And it's this belief that part of the reason and rationale for this taking place with Haiti is because Haiti was one of the first to rebel. It's that. I mean, think of the double indemnity, having to pay for the fact that you were a slave. Hey, we accept that you rebelled from us, putting you in chains. but we're property, and property has a value, and you need to pay us the value for that value that you represented as property. It's like, God, it's like, get the fuck out of here. Pink rose, yes. It's disgusting. It's grotesque. What is this? Jemima Pierre. You have Haitian American and Haitians in France cheering on foreign occupation of Haiti. Yes, they believe the racist lie that Haitians are beast-like. Yes. Yes. When you are not in a space, you often orient your point of view to where you are. Like if you were raised in Japan, you may have a point of view of Japan that's, think of Americans. Americans look at the world through a certain lens. American exceptionalism. We are somehow special and unique as we weigh 300 pounds more, as we die 4 years younger, as we're less educated. But we are unique just by definition. Yeah, people have screwed up views of the world in direct relation to what they are exposed to. And if I put a gentle view on it, you see a country that is fundamentally broken, and you ask yourself, how do we fix this? You start there. Now your answer may be, it's so broken it can't fix itself, which leads you to a different tack, right? But again, an argument people will make is hands off Haiti. And it's like, okay, but there's no state. How do you feed it? There's no, there are practical problems. And the issue becomes, yeah, but the people who are there are not looking out for the benefit and the best interests of the state. If they were, it would not look like it does now. So, yeah, it's true. They're cheering it on. But they don't know. They haven't read our article. Meaning they haven't read all of the stuff that was taking place over the course of all of those decades, all of those centuries, to make it what it is. And what Dr. Pierre was trying to do in a short window of time was to try to explain all of that stuff, where it's like there's a litany of history, and you ask me to give historical context, and damn it, I'm gonna do it. I'm like, you go, boo. You go. And yeah, she did phenomenal. No complaints. No complaints. She is phenomenal. I am going to have her back. She has a magnificent pedigree. And she was very gracious, by the way. I hit her up. I think it was 5 a.m. my time, something like that. I was in a disagreement, I put it that way, with somebody. I was in a disagreement. And being in that disagreement, fucking moon opposition Pluto. That's just horrible. The way people interact sometimes, they trigger each other in very weird ways. But whatever. And so by the time I finally got to, I was thinking of, okay, who do you want to get? Who do you want to get? Who do you want to get? I was thinking of it all night. And finally I was like, well, what about Haiti? They're indicting Cherizier. I speak no French, so forgive me, a little bit of Spanish. So let's try him. Let's try her. Well, let's try, and I think I reached out to Joe Horn. Joe Horn was like, hey, well, what about her? I'm not available. And she was like, I watch your show. And I was like, you had me at hello. You had me at hello. I don't care what you say after that. You had me at hello. She was like, I watch your show. I appreciate your show. I would absolutely be down to come on. Not to mention she's kind of in Sarah's position where she's on the West Coast. So it's like 6 a.m. that she's coming on. It's like, oh, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. But she was nice enough to come on. She was nice enough to join me. She was a fantastic guest. So Lord knows, I hope she comes back. She was great. She was absolutely great. All right. I'm going to end this. We have come to the end. We have come to the end. I am going to say like, I'm going to say share, I'm going to say subscribe. I want to thank all of you for joining me. Oh, by the way, I may not be here tomorrow. If you see me, I can't get it up. If you see me, it's just me maybe doing a segment or something like that. It's not going to be before my last show. Tomorrow is a sad day. It is finally the day in which I am taking wings and leaving Malaysia. And so I enjoyed it here. it's going to be bittersweet. I always get energized to go somewhere else, but I enjoyed it here. Let's see, we have one more. What is this? A must read about the successful Haitian slave revolution is The Black Jacobins. Come on. C.L.R. James, and Trinidadian socialist historian. Good to know, Keith Alcock. Thank you for that, Keith. In fact, thank all of you for that. All of you who contribute, who assist the channel, give it a like, give it a share. All of those things are deeply appreciated. Buy me a coffee, PayPal, Patreon. I'm trying to think of anything else. This is very debasing, having to do this, but it's just part of the job. You guys have a phenomenal day. And I will see you bright and early, maybe tomorrow morning. Be safe all. Have a good one.